My name is Daniel Mercer, badge number 22F4, Indiana State Highway Patrol. For almost 20 years, I've driven the same stretch of Interstate 65, from the steel skeleton of Gary down past Lafayette through endless corn and cold asphalt. I've pulled wrecks out of ditches, carried bodies wrapped in silver blankets, written tickets, broken up bar fights and truck stops. Nothing ever scared me until the night I realized the highway was alive. I'm recording this because I don't think I'll be here much longer. If what happened to my father is about to happen to me, I need someone, anyone, to know that what the troopers whisper about after midnight is real. We call it the Silent Mile. It started like any other Tuesday night. Clear skies, temperature around 52, traffic light. I was parked near mile marker 149, radar gun idling on the dash, drinking cold coffee and listening to dispatch hum through the static. Routine, the kind of quiet that makes you grateful for boredom. Then the radio crackled, half buried under white noise. Unit 7-2, respond to a possible abandoned vehicle northbound I-65 between 212 and 210. Engine running, doors locked. Caller says nobody inside. Nothing unusual there. We get a dozen of those a month. People pull over, step into the woods to relieve themselves, maybe hitch a ride if their car dies. Still, something about the dispatcher's tone, tight, clipped, made my stomach knot. Copy that, Central, I answered, and 7-2 en route. The moment I pulled back onto the blacktop, the air changed. Not temperature, not wind, pressure. Like the whole sky pressed down a few inches closer to the earth. The hum of the tires deepened, turning hollow like driving through a tunnel that wasn't there. My dashboard clock blinked 12:47 a.m., then 12:46, then 12:45. I tapped it. It kept counting backward. I laughed under my breath. Cheap equipment, I thought. But as I passed mile 212, a fog rolled in so suddenly it looked poured from a bucket. It swallowed the stars, the tree line, the reflection of my headlights. The radio hissed again, then died completely. No static. Just silence thick enough to hear my pulse in my ears. That's when I saw the car, a 1996 Ford Taurus, champagne gold, idling on the shoulder with both headlights on. Steam puffed from the tailpipe, doors locked, windows fogged from inside. I approached with my hand near my holster, standard procedure. The engine purred like a cat, but the interior was empty. Keys still in ignition, no wallet, no phone, no sign of a driver. I circled once and my flashlight caught a badge lying on the pavement, half buried in gravel. Indiana State Highway Patrol, badge 1847, my father's number. I hadn't seen that badge in 33 years, not since the day they found his cruiser empty at mile marker 152. Engine running, door open, seatbelt neatly unbuckled. Officially, he'd walked off post. Unofficially, every trooper knew better. I swallowed hard and opened the Taurus door. The interior smelled wrong, like rain on hot metal, copper, and something faintly sweet, like decaying leaves. The dashboard clock blinked 3:33. Every dial spun once, stopped, and froze. Then the car radio came alive, whispering through static. "Daniel, stay in the light." It was my father's voice. I know how insane that sounds, but I'd know it anywhere. The rasp, the drop at the end of every sentence. Before I could answer, the fog around the cruiser began to move. Not drift, move. Like something enormous exhaling. I stepped back, aimed my flashlight into the gray, and saw shapes, 5, 6, maybe more, standing just beyond reach of the beam. Too tall, too still. The moment my light touched them, they slid backward into the mist like figures erased from film. Then everything stopped. Fog gone. Radio normal. Clock back to 12:47. Except the Taurus wasn't there anymore. Just tire tracks that ended in the middle of the shoulder like the car had evaporated. I filed the report like protocol demanded. False alarm, no contact. But that night never left me. I could still feel the heat of that engine on my fingertips. Hear my father's voice in the hiss. For months afterward, I'd pull over near mile 149 and sit with my headlights off, waiting to see if the fog would come back. It never did, not then. What did come back were the nightmares. Dreams where I was driving I-65 alone, the mile markers counting backward, 211, 210, 209, until they turned into years, 2005, 1987, 1847, then nothing but blacktop stretching into forever. I started digging through old case files off the books. I wasn't supposed to, but obsession feels a lot like duty when you wear a badge. That's when I found the pattern. Every missing trooper between mile 149 and 212 vanished at exactly 3:33 a.m., every one on the 13th day of the month. The reports were buried under bureaucratic language. Communication failure. Vehicle recovered, driver missing. But if you read between the lines, you could hear the fear. There's a stretch of road out here where reality folds like cheap metal, where time rewinds in 1-minute increments, and I think whatever's hiding in that fog took my father, and now it's coming for me. So before I vanish too, I'm telling you everything, because this isn't folklore and it sure as hell isn't coincidence. It's a truth every trooper in Indiana knows, but none will say aloud. Welcome to the Silent Mile. If stories like this pull you in, real voices, real mysteries, the dark corners of America most people drive past without ever knowing what's under the asphalt, hit subscribe, leave a comment, and share this story. Your support keeps the channel alive and gives me the drive to bring you more of the truths no one else will tell. For the next few nights, I couldn't stop replaying the footage. The dash cam from my cruiser should have caught everything. The fog, the car, the badge. But when I reviewed it, there was nothing. One moment, the road was clear. The next, my headlights blinked, and the timer jumped forward exactly 3 minutes and 33 seconds. I sent the footage to the tech division. They said the camera had experienced a data glitch. Sure. Except that every second of footage was intact, except for that missing 3:33. On the fourth night, I called Marla Jennings, the night dispatcher. She'd been with the department since before I joined. Calm voice, dry humor, the kind of woman who could coordinate 3 crashes and a tornado warning without breaking rhythm. Marla, I said, remember that abandoned vehicle call last week? She hesitated before answering. The one near 212? Yeah. What about it? Can you check who logged that call in? She paused again. Already tried. There's no record, no caller, no timestamp, nothing in the CAD system, like it never came through. I gripped the phone tighter. You were the one who dispatched me. I remember, she said quietly. But there's no trace of it, Daniel, not even audio logs. It's gone. The silence on the line stretched until it became its own kind of noise. Can I tell you something? She finally said. Off the record? Yeah. She lowered her voice. You're not the first trooper to ask about missing calls. There's a file the old-timers keep. Not official, just stories and copies of reports that went missing. They call it the Ghost Ledger. Every officer who's gone missing on that stretch had one thing in common. They were all looking for someone else who'd disappeared before them. That hit like a punch to the gut, because that's exactly what I was doing. Marla sent me a scan from the ghost ledger later that night, a faded report from 1991, the year my father vanished. The handwriting was unmistakable, his signature, his looping cursive. The report described an abandoned cruiser at mile 152, radio dead, engine active. But in the margin, he'd written something the official version never included. If you see the mile markers counting backward, don't stop. Keep driving until the numbers stop changing. I stared at those words until dawn. My father hadn't just disappeared. He'd left a message for whoever came after him, for me. The next evening, I decided to drive the silent mile again. Not as a cop, as a son. I turned off the cruiser's GPS, left the dash cam unplugged, and radioed Marla. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7-2. I'm doing a routine patrol between mile 149 and 212. Her voice came back steady but edged with worry. "Copy, 7-2. Be careful out there. You're heading into the dead zone." "The what?" "That's what the tech guys call it. For some reason, the GPS satellites drop signal exactly between those markers. Always have. Nobody can explain it." "Yeah," I said. "I noticed." The night was unnaturally clear. Stars bright, air cold, a thin fog brushing the treetops like it was waiting for permission to drop lower. My headlights sliced through the dark in long white tunnels. I drove in silence, mile after mile, until I hit 200, then 199, then 198. That's when I noticed something small but wrong: the mile markers themselves. They weren't the usual reflective green signs. They looked older, faded, the numbers slightly crooked like they'd been hand-painted decades ago. Mile 197, mile 196. Then suddenly, mile 1887. I slammed the brakes. The number was stenciled in the same green, but the font was archaic, like something from an old railroad sign. Beneath it, carved crudely into the metal, were the words, "Returned but never arrived." A breeze swept across the fields, carrying the faint sound of engines that weren't mine. Low, rhythmic, mechanical, like convoys moving underground. I stepped out of the cruiser, flashlight steady, breath ghosting in the cold air. The highway behind me was empty. The one ahead shimmered as if heat were rising from it. But the temperature had dropped to 38. My radio crackled once. Then came Marla's voice, distorted and stretched like it was traveling through a bad dream. "Daniel, turn back, now." "Marla, you're breaking up." "He's there, your father, mile 1847. Then the signal cut out. I stood alone under the Interstate's endless black ribbon, my flashlight trembling slightly against my glove. Mile 1847, my father's badge number. I should have gotten back in the car, should have called for backup, logged the anomaly, gone home. But curiosity's a disease in my family, and I had it bad. I started walking. The air grew thicker the farther I went. Each breath felt like inhaling static. The silence was absolute, not just the absence of sound, but the presence of something that didn't want sound to exist. At mile 1849, the trees changed. One moment they were bare and skeletal. The next, leaves appeared, green, full, summer bright, then brown again. I blinked, and the seasons flickered by like a film reel on fast forward. At mile 1848, I found the first shoe, a patrol boot, size 11, lying in the middle of the asphalt. The leather was cracked, the sole half melted as if exposed to heat. I recognized it instantly. My father had the same make, issued in 1987. And then, through the shifting air ahead, I saw the outline of a man standing in the road, tall, broad-shouldered, head slightly tilted like he was listening. He was wearing a trooper's uniform. I raised my flashlight and called out, "Sir, you okay?" The figure turned toward me, and in the beam of light, his badge gleamed. 1847. My knees almost gave out. "Dad," he lifted his hand, palm open. For a second, I thought he was reaching for me. Then he pointed behind me. I turned, and the road was gone. The pavement had dissolved into a narrow strip of cracked concrete, winding through thick trees. The highway signs were rusted metal reading U.S. Route 65 instead of Interstate. The markings on the asphalt were faded white lines from another era, and somewhere beyond the trees I could hear voices, not words, more like echoes of conversations, car radios from different decades bleeding together. When I looked back, the figure was gone. Only the faint outline of his boots remained on the asphalt, pressed into dust that hadn't existed seconds ago. My cruiser was still there, but it looked older, weathered, dusty, the paint dull. The digital clock on the dashboard now read October 13th, 1991. That's when I panicked. I ran for the car, jumped inside, turned the key. Nothing. The engine didn't even click. My flashlight flickered, then went out. In the rearview mirror, headlights appeared. 2, 4, 6, too high off the ground to be cars. They moved in pairs, glowing amber like animal eyes. I slammed the gear shift into reverse, but the car wouldn't budge. The air outside rippled, shapes forming in the darkness. Human silhouettes, but wrong, jointed in strange places. The headlights behind me multiplied, forming a wall of golden light. Then, through the noise and the panic, came a sound that froze me solid, my father's voice whispering from the passenger seat. "Keep driving forward, son. Whatever you do, don't stop." I turned my head. The seat was empty. But the keys turned on their own, and the cruiser roared to life. The odometer began ticking backward. 2,000 miles. 1,950. 1,900. The world outside blurred. The fog became a tunnel. Mile markers flashing past like strobe lights. 1888, 1889, 1890. And then, as suddenly as it started, it ended. I was back on modern I-65, radio alive, GPS pinging, the dawn light stretching over the fields. The odometer read exactly what it had before the drive. But sitting on the passenger seat was a rusted badge. 1847. I didn't file that report either. How could I? Who'd believe me? Instead, I called Marla. She answered on the first ring, voice trembling. "Daniel, you're alive?" "Why wouldn't I be?" She exhaled shakily. "Because you've been missing for 3 days." When I finally pulled into the district lot, dawn was just breaking over the low concrete buildings of the Indiana State Police Post. Everything looked normal, except the world moved with the faint drag of a bad dream, like the colors had lost half their brightness. Marla was waiting in the lobby, arms crossed, eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. "You look like hell," she said. "Appreciate the honesty," I replied, forcing a smile. She didn't smile back. "You disappeared, Daniel. We called every county from Lafayette to Rensselaer. No one saw you. The GPS in your cruiser went dark at exactly 3:33 a.m. on the 13th. Then, poof, you're back at the post parking lot 3 days later like nothing happened. Do you have any idea what that does to a person?" 3 days, I repeated. "No, I swear, Marla, I drove maybe 20 minutes. "Yeah, well, tell that to the clock." She led me into the communications office, the hum of fluorescent lights bouncing off old linoleum. On the screen behind her desk, she pulled up the dispatch log, the entry for Unit 72, Mercer. Daniel blinked red. Under status, it read, inactive, no response, 72 hours. My hands felt numb. Did anyone check my house? Twice, empty. I took a slow breath. Then where the hell was I? Marla studied me carefully, like she was trying to decide whether to treat me as a partner or a patient. Finally, she said, "Come with me." She led me to the archives room, a narrow, dust-choked corridor lined with filing cabinets that hadn't been touched in years. From the bottom drawer, she pulled out a battered folder labeled Project Vane. "I found this when I started looking for your dad's file," she said. "It's not in any official database, no digital record, no classification stamp, but it was buried under infrastructure maintenance. Inside were faded memos, typewritten on yellowing paper. The first page was dated July 1958. Project Vane, proposal to integrate federal highway construction with subterranean stabilization grid per Department of Defense directive. Primary objective, neutralize subsurface resonance phenomena reported along Midwest transit routes. Subsurface resonance? I muttered. What does that even mean? Marla shrugged. You tell me. You're the one who's been hearing voices out there. I kept reading. The memo described a series of containment nodes built into the highway foundations. Metal pylons filled with conductive alloys meant to absorb temporal distortion. Another page mentioned that the system required recalibration every 33 years. The next scheduled recalibration, 2024, the year we were in. At the bottom of the file was a photograph, black and white, stamped confidential. It showed a team of men in hard hats standing beside a massive pit of rebar and steel. Behind them, stenciled on a support beam, were the words, Vane Node 1847, active. My mouth went dry. Marla noticed. That number again? Yeah, I whispered. It's my father's badge number, and the mile marker where everything happens. Daniel, what if... She hesitated, searching for the right word. What if whatever happened to him wasn't random? What if he got too close to this thing they built? Before I could answer, a radio on the shelf hissed to life. Static. Then a voice. Unit 7-2, respond. Mile marker 1847, abandoned vehicle, engine running. Marla froze. That's, I know. The voice repeated, fainter this time. Abandoned vehicle, engine running. Then silence. We stared at each other. Marla swallowed hard. That's the same dispatch you got last week. And the one my father got in 1991, I said. Someone or something is replaying it. For the first time since I'd known her, I saw fear break through her professional calm. What are you going to do? She asked. I need to go back, I said. Absolutely not. Daniel, listen to me. I have to. If the highway's some kind of machine or whatever the hell Project Vane built, it's waking up. My father tried to warn them. He left me clues. This isn't just ghosts or fog. It's a system malfunctioning. She stared at me, jaw tight. You realize how that sounds? I don't care. I just need to see it again. Marla sighed, then walked to her desk drawer. She pulled out a small silver recorder and pressed it into my hand. At least, take this, keep it running. If you disappear again, I want proof of where you went. That night, I drove north under a bruised purple sky, the horizon pulsing with distant lightning. My hands trembled on the wheel, but not from fear, something deeper, like a tuning fork inside me vibrating in sympathy with the road. As I crossed mile 200, the air shimmered again. Static filled the radio. The cruiser clock blinked 3:32, then 3:33. Fog erupted from the ditches, swallowing everything ahead. I hit record on Marla's device. This is Trooper Daniel Mercer, Unit 7-2. Location unknown, possibly within anomaly zone. Visibility near zero, attempting to maintain linear route. The headlights flickered, then steadied. I could see the faint outline of a sign. Mile 1847. Just beneath the number, someone had spray-painted 3 words in red. Still breathing below. A mechanical hum rose beneath the pavement, deep, rhythmic, alive. My cruiser shook like something massive moved far underground. "Marla," I said into the recorder, "if you hear this, Project Vane wasn't a myth. The highway isn't just concrete, it's..." The road split open ahead of me. A fissure, wide enough to swallow the car, tore through the asphalt with a sound like thunder underwater. I slammed the brakes, but inertia pulled me forward. The cruiser skidded sideways, half the front end hanging over the drop. Through the gap I saw movement, metal ribs, glowing lines, something that looked disturbingly like veins pulsing with faint red light. Then I heard a voice, echoing from below. "You shouldn't have come back, son." My father's voice again, but heavier, older, layered with other tones beneath it. I looked down into the pit. For one impossible instant I saw him standing there, my father still in uniform, hand raised in warning. "It's not dead, Daniel, it's dreaming." The fissure snapped shut. The cruiser jerked backward, tires screeching. Everything went black. When I woke, I was in the hospital in Lafayette, IV in my arm, uniform cut open. A nurse told me I'd been found on the shoulder near mile 149, engine running, doors locked from inside. A passing trucker saw the lights and called it in. They said I'd been unconscious for 16 hours. Marla was sitting in the corner, dark circles under her eyes. "You almost died," she said flatly. "I didn't." She nodded, lips pressed tight. "Your recorder was running the whole time." "Did you listen?" She handed me the device. "You should." I pressed play. My own voice came through calm, professional, until the part where I described the fissure. Then there was silence. After 6 full seconds, another voice joined. Low, deep, like it came from the ground itself. The highways remember. Then a burst of static so violent it made the speaker crackle. "That's all it recorded," Marla whispered. The timestamp? 3:33 a.m. again. We sat there in silence. Outside the window, I could see the ribbon of I-65 stretching south, shimmering faintly in the heat haze. For the first time, I realized how endless it really looked. Like it wasn't built to go somewhere, but to contain something. Marla finally spoke. "You think it's over?" I shook my head. "No. Whatever's under that road, it's still breathing. And I think my father's still down there with it." Later that night, I returned to my motel room, sat on the bed, and stared at the badge I'd found in the Taurus. The number gleamed faintly in the dark. 1847. I could feel the hum of the highway even here, miles away, like it was inside the walls, inside me. I opened my laptop and typed a single line into my private journal. "If I disappear again, follow the hum." Then I attached the Project Vane files and hit send. To Marla, to a few trusted troopers, to my own cloud storage, just in case. The last thing I remember before sleep took me was the faint sound of engines outside, steady, synchronized, 6 lights moving north toward the horizon, and somewhere inside that distant roar, my father's voice whispering again, "Keep driving, son. Don't let it wake." I was cleared for duty 2 weeks later, though everyone at the post looked at me differently, like I'd come back from a place they couldn't name. The official report called my incident fatigue-related hallucination brought on by stress. They gave me 3 days leave and a psychological evaluation, but no amount of rest could erase what I'd seen in that fissure, or the sound of my father's voice echoing from the earth. Marla didn't believe the fatigue story either. She'd started doing her own digging, cross-referencing infrastructure blueprints with the Project Vane documents we'd found. The deeper she went, the stranger it got. "Every 33 years," she said one night over stale coffee in the break room, "there's a spike in missing person reports along the Interstate system. It lines up exactly with Vane's recalibration schedule. Every time they stabilize the grid, people vanish." I rubbed my temples. So the highway eats people to stay balanced? I don't know. Maybe it trades something, energy for silence. But if the next recalibration is this year, that means it's due soon. Outside, rain hit the windows in thin, slanted sheets. The thunder didn't roll the way it should have. It pulsed, steady as a heartbeat. She laid another photo on the table, a satellite thermal scan of Interstate 65. The highway glowed in bright veins of orange, and at its center, between mile 149 and 212, burned a single red node. "That's the hot spot," she said. "It's exactly where you saw the fissure." "Node 1847, I whispered. Marla nodded. "I think it's waking up." We decided to go back, together. She wasn't a field officer, but she insisted on coming, carrying her old-fashioned tape recorder like a weapon of faith. "If you vanish again," she said, "I'm not sitting in dispatch wondering what happened." We left just after midnight. The rain had stopped, leaving the road slick and black. The hum beneath the asphalt had grown louder, like machinery warming up deep below the earth. I could feel it through the steering wheel. Marla watched the mile markers. 210, 209. Wait, did that one just say 1987? "Yeah," I said. "That's when my father disappeared." She adjusted the recorder. "This is Dispatcher Marla Jennings and Trooper Daniel Mercer, documenting unexplained temporal phenomena on I-65 northbound. Timestamp 12:44 a.m. The air inside the cruiser thickened. The windshield fog through the defroster was running full blast. My ears popped like we'd climbed a mountain in seconds. Mile 1849. Ahead, fog spilled over the asphalt again, dense, luminescent, breathing with slow rhythm. I slowed to 20. The headlights cut through layers of gray, revealing glimpses of things that shouldn't share space. A wooden wagon with steel patrol lights, a 1970s semi-truck rusted but idling, a stretch of brick road glinting under asphalt that hadn't existed in a century. Marla's voice trembled. "Daniel, I think we're overlapping times." Then the radio screamed, not static, a chorus of overlapping dispatch calls from decades of patrols. Voices layered over each other. Unit 7-2 respond, abandoned vehicle, engine running, repeating endlessly, looping like a prayer. "Kill the radio," I shouted. She flicked the switch, but the sound kept coming from everywhere, through the air vents, through the floor, through the beating of our hearts. Something flashed in front of us, a man. The same broad shoulders, same uniform. "Dad!" I slammed the brakes. The cruiser skidded sideways, stopping inches from him. He stood motionless in the beams, eyes black as road tar. Marla whispered, "Daniel, that's not..." He raised his hand. The gesture looked human, almost gentle, until I saw the movement ripple through the pavement beneath him, spreading like a pulse through the highway. The hum became a roar. A fissure ripped across the asphalt again, wider this time. The cruiser's front wheels dropped into the gap. I floored it, tires squealing, engine screaming, but something below was pulling us down. Marla grabbed my arm. "The recorder. Get this on tape." "I'm not dying for evidence," I shouted, shifting into reverse. The tires caught. The car lurched backward, free from the pit, just as a column of light erupted from the crack, blinding white shot through with veins of red. Through that light I saw what lay beneath the road, a lattice of steel beams, each glowing with inscriptions that looked alive, pulsing in sync with my heartbeat. In the spaces between the beams, something vast moved, scales glinting like wet asphalt. A serpent or something shaped like one coiled around the skeleton of the highway itself. My father's figure dissolved into that light, his voice echoing across every speaker in the car. "Containment failing. Keep driving south. Don't stop at mile 1842. Then he was gone. The fissure sealed behind us as if it had never been there. The road stretched smooth and empty ahead, wet and shining under the headlights. Marla clutched the recorder to her chest, breathing hard. "Did you see?" "I saw," I said. "And if that thing's alive, the whole interstate system is part of it." She nodded slowly. Project Vane wasn't building roads. They were building arteries. We drove in silence until the fog thinned and the first hint of sunrise colored the eastern sky. At mile 149, the radio crackled to life again. Normal dispatch chatter, morning traffic reports, the ordinary world pretending nothing had happened. Marla turned off the recorder and stared out the window. "You're going to file this, right? Tell them everything." "They won't believe us," I said. "They'll call it equipment malfunction or exhaustion, just like they did to my father." "So what do we do?" I looked at the highway stretching ahead, endless and humming softly like a living thing waiting to breathe. We document it, quietly build proof. If Project Vane is real, someone high up already knows. And if they're hiding it, we find out why. Marla nodded. "Then we start with the archives in Indianapolis. That's where the original highway plans are stored." I met her eyes. "We?" She gave a half smile. "You think I'm letting you drive into another dimension alone?" That morning, I parked the cruiser behind the station and sat with the engine off, listening. Beneath the ticking of the cooling metal, I could still hear it, the deep, steady pulse of the road beneath me. I'd felt it ever since I was a kid riding shotgun with my dad, long before I knew what it was. Now I understood. The highway wasn't just built on the land, it was part of it. Something ancient running beneath the Midwest had been contained, not destroyed. And every few decades, the containment weakened, just enough to whisper through the asphalt, to call to anyone who would listen, to call to people like us. I turned on the recorder and spoke quietly, my voice shaking more from awe than fear. "This is Trooper Daniel Mercer, badge 22 Fortune. If you're hearing this, stay off Interstate 65 between mile 149 and 212 during the month of October. The road isn't what you think it is. The hum you hear under your tires, it's real, it's alive, and it remembers." I clicked the recorder off. Outside, the rising sun turned the asphalt to gold. Trucks began to roll by, their tires drumming the beat of something older than steel or pavement. The hum faded, buried under daylight, but I knew it would be back when night returned. And somewhere far below, under layers of concrete and history, something turned in its sleep. It's strange what silence does to you after you've heard the highway breathe. For 2 weeks after that night, I couldn't sleep without the low drone of engines outside my window. The sound anchored me, reminded me the world was still normal, but the silence in between, the gaps, those felt like the road was listening back. Marla and I spent those 2 weeks digging. every database we could access, every scanned document from the Department of Transportation archives. She worked the day shift to stay close to the communication servers. I took nights, pretending to patrol while running quiet miles north and south, recorder on, collecting the hum. The further we looked, the clearer the pattern became. Every 33 years, the same spike in unexplained disappearances along interstates built before 1960. Indiana, Ohio, Illinois. All roads radiating from the same origin point, a small, almost forgotten town called Crown Station, built directly over the geographic center of the old highway grid. My father had written that name once in his notebooks, circled it twice, underlined it with a shaking hand. Crown Station had been wiped off official maps after 1971, absorbed by county mergers, its existence reduced to a maintenance yard and a stretch of cracked pavement where the old US 31 intersected the newer interstates. But on historical surveys from the 1800s, it had another name, Corridor Zero. That's where we needed to go. We left just after sunset on October 25th. The sky was bruised purple again, the same color it had been the night the fissure opened. I drove. Marla handled the recorder and a laptop balanced on her knees. She'd rigged a GPS overlay that mapped electromagnetic fluctuations in real time. The closer we got to Crown Station, the more the lines jumped. "You sure you're ready for this?" she asked. "No," I said, "but ready doesn't seem to matter." At mile 174, her laptop beeped. The screen flashed. Anomaly detected. Coordinate match Corridor Zero. Ahead, the exit sign materialized through fog that hadn't been there a second earlier. White letters, rusted frame, Exit 47. Crown Station, Service Road. "Exit 47, Marla murmured. "The one your dad warned about." I eased off the throttle. The ramp curved downward, tighter than any modern grade allowed, lined with dead billboards half hidden by vines. Our headlights cut across slogans from other decades. "Visit historic Crown Station." "Home of the Crossroads Fair, 1958. Each layer fading into the next, like peeling wallpaper. The ramp ended in a wide circle of cracked concrete. At its center stood a maintenance garage with a faded state seal over the door. Every window was dark. Marla's laptop chimed again. "Field density off the charts. Daniel, something's running under us." I killed the engine. The hum continued. We stepped out into air that smelled of ozone and wet stone. Somewhere below, metal groaned, a slow, rhythmic pulse that matched my heartbeat. "Keep recording," I said. We pushed open the garage door. Inside, dust thick as ash coated everything. Old patrol motorcycles, shelves of highway signs stacked like tombstones. At the far end, behind a row of barrels, a metal hatch sat flush with the floor. Stenciled on it, barely visible beneath grime, were the letters PV 1847. Marla knelt beside it, tracing the outline with her fingers. Vein node. There was a keypad built into the hatch, the kind used on military facilities, though the wiring had long since corroded. I didn't expect it to work, but when I brushed away the dust, the screen lit up faint blue. It blinked 3 numbers before settling on 1. 3:33 a.m., Marla whispered. "It's waiting." We didn't open it, not yet. We spent the next hour cataloging everything in the room. Blueprints, maintenance logs, old typewritten memos. Most of them were stamped U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Project Vane. But one folder, newer, bore the seal of the Department of Transportation Temporal Research Division, an agency that officially didn't exist. Inside were incident reports, Not paranormal, not supernatural, clinical, precise. Subject, Mercer, Stanley A., Trooper, deceased, presumed lost in field. Node 1847 showing increased resonance response. Exposure threshold breached at 03, 33 hours. Recommend closure of Corridor 0 pending next cycle activation, 2024. I felt my throat tighten. My father's name, written not in police ink, but in military code. Marla closed the folder gently. They knew he was alive in there, she said. They just couldn't get him back. I sat against the wall, the weight of years pressing down. He's not dead, Marla. He's part of it. Whatever's under the asphalt took him, and it's taking more every cycle. She looked at the hatch, expression unreadable. Then we find a way to talk to it. At 2:55 a.m., the air in the garage shifted. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the concrete. The keypad on the hatch began flashing numbers counting backward from 33. Marla hit record. Time synchronization event in progress, she said, her voice shaking. When the counter hit 0, the hatch unlocked with a slow hydraulic hiss. A blast of air smelling of rust and old rain swept upward. A ladder descended into darkness. I looked at Marla. She nodded once. If we don't go now, we'll never know. I clipped a flashlight to my vest and started down. The metal rungs were cold, wet with condensation. 30 feet below, the tunnel opened into a maintenance corridor, lined with humming conduits. Every few feet, glowing red nodes pulsed in rhythm, just like veins. The sound was everywhere, a heartbeat, an engine, something alive. We followed the tunnel until it widened into a chamber filled with scaffolding and ancient machinery. In the center stood a steel column engraved with coordinates, dates, and names. The most recent inscription read, Mercer, S, Cycle 1987, Mercer, D, Cycle 2024. My name, already carved. Marla touched the metal, her voice barely a whisper. It's predicting who the system claims next. I stared at it until the letters blurred. Not if we shut it down. How? Before I could answer, the lights along the corridor flared white. The hum deepened into a roar, and from the far end of the chamber came a surge of wind carrying voices, hundreds of them, overlapping in agony and prayer. Help me. Keep driving. Don't let it wake. Marla grabbed my arm. Daniel, the node's opening. Look. The steel column split down the center, revealing a shaft of light descending into endless depth. Within that light, shadowed figures moved, drifting upward like swimmers through liquid glass. Their faces shifted from troopers to civilians, to children, to nothing at all. I recognized one of them, my father reaching out, lips moving. No sound came out, but I could read the words. It's not a monster, it's a memory. Then the light swallowed him. The chamber began to shake. Machinery screeched. The ladder behind us rattled like it wanted to throw itself apart. Marla yelled over the noise. We have to get out, now. We ran. The tunnel warped around us, walls stretching and contracting like lungs. The red nodes flashed faster, their glow turning white hot. At the base of the ladder, I looked back once and saw the light chasing us, filling the corridor like a wave. We climbed, bursting through the hatch just as it slammed shut behind us with a metallic clang. The garage was silent again. The hum had stopped. The clock on the keypad read 3:47 a.m. Marla collapsed against the wall, gasping. What did we just do? I think, I said, staring at the motionless road outside. We woke it up. By the time we made it back to the main road, dawn had smeared a thin gray light across the horizon. The fog was gone, but the air felt heavier, like the world had exhaled and hadn't drawn another breath yet. I switched on the radio. Every frequency hissed with static, except one. A woman's voice, calm, clipped, official. "This is the Federal Highway Emergency Network. Please remain in your vehicles. Do not exit onto unmarked roads. Repeat, do not exit." Marla frowned. "Since when do we have a Federal Highway Emergency Network?" "Since never," I said. "It's not one of ours." The voice repeated itself word for word, then looped again, a perfect recording. When we reached Interstate 65, I noticed something strange. Every single mile marker had been replaced overnight. They gleamed with new paint, perfectly straight, numbers starting at 00 and climbing. I slowed down, staring through the windshield. Marla's laptop blinked red. "Daniel, the coordinates are wrong. We're not on 65 anymore. The GPS says we're 12 miles east of it." "Impossible. I'm telling you the highway moved." I laughed, short and nervous. Highways don't move. But as we drove, the landmarks didn't match. The cornfields were gone, replaced by dense pine forests that shouldn't exist in this part of Indiana. The signs ahead read, "Welcome to Crown Station, population 0. A shiver crawled down my back. It's looping us. We pulled into the empty service area, the same one we'd left an hour earlier. Same cracked concrete, same rusted vending machines, but the maintenance garage was gone. In its place stood a billboard, Corridor 0, Temporal Rehabilitation Zone. Below it, someone had spray-painted in thick black letters, "The road remembers." Marla pressed her palms to the steering wheel. "We didn't wake it up, Daniel, we broke it." Before I could answer, headlights appeared behind us, half a dozen vehicles moving fast. I grabbed the radio. "Unknown convoy approaching northbound 65, near exit 47, identify." The signal squealed. A man's voice came through, distorted but sharp. "This is Captain Rains, U.S. Department of Transportation Containment Division. Step out of the vehicle, Trooper Mercer. You've interfered with a federal operation." Marla's eyes widened. "Containment Division? That's not—" "Stay quiet," I whispered. "Let's see what they want." The lead vehicle, a matte black SUV with no plates, stopped inches from my bumper. 3 men stepped out, all in gray uniforms, faces expressionless behind mirrored visors. The one in front held up an ID badge embossed with the Doughty seal, and something else beneath it, an Ouroboros, a serpent eating its own tail. "Trooper Mercer," he said, "you've compromised Node 1847. We're here to quarantine the anomaly." "Quarantine?" I stepped closer. "You mean the living thing you've been building roads around for 70 years? He didn't flinch. "Your clearance level doesn't authorize that knowledge." "Too late. I've already seen it." Behind him, another agent placed devices along the shoulder, black boxes humming softly, emitting faint red light. The hum resonated with the same frequency I'd felt under the highway. Marla whispered, "They're trying to reseal it." I pointed at the boxes. "If you turn those on, you'll trap everyone still inside the corridor, every missing trooper, every civilian." "Collateral stabilization," Rains said flatly. "Acceptable loss." I took a step forward. "That includes my father." For the first time, something flickered behind his visor. Recognition, maybe pity. He made the same mistake you did. He opened what should have stayed closed. He raised a small transmitter, thumb poised on a switch. I didn't think. Training took over. I lunged, knocking the transmitter from his hand. It hit the ground and skidded beneath the SUV. A burst of energy flashed across the pavement, white arcs dancing like lightning. Every black box lit up at once, and the highway screamed. The sound wasn't mechanical. It was alive. Metal bending, earth tearing, a million voices shouting through the same throat. The ground split in glowing fractures that spread outward for miles. The agents staggered, clutching their helmets. Marla grabbed my arm. "We have to get off the road." We dove behind the cruiser as light poured from the cracks, bright enough to turn night into noon. Then everything stopped. No sound, no wind, just stillness. When I opened my eyes, we weren't on the same highway anymore. The black SUVs were gone. The trees around us were skeletal, covered in frost, though it was October. Overhead, the sky shimmered like oil on water, day and night coexisting, flickering. Marla whispered, "We're inside it." I stood scanning the horizon. The mile marker beside us read 65, year 1918. Ahead, another sign blinked between 1965 and 2024. Time itself was sliding. She turned to me, her voice trembling. "This is the Vanishing Corridor. It's pulling the past and future into one place." I reached for my radio. "Central, this is Trooper Mercer. Do you copy?" A faint voice answered, Marla's voice, but from another time. "Daniel, if you can hear this, you're crossing the point of no return." The Marla beside me froze, eyes wide. "That's me. That's my voice." The static deepened into words we both recognized. Dispatch codes. Our own conversation from the night we first found the Taurus. The corridor wasn't just collapsing. It was looping every moment it had ever contained. I looked down the road, stretching ahead. Mile markers flashing backward through decades. Somewhere within that blur of time, my father was waiting. I turned to Marla. "We finish what he started. We find the original source, shut it down before it consumes the whole system." She nodded once, set her recorder on the dashboard, and pressed record. "Entry log 1, Vanishing Corridor Expedition. If anyone ever finds this, tell them the highway wasn't built for us to travel. It was built to remember." I put the car in gear, headlights cutting into a landscape that no longer belonged to a single year. The hum returned, steady, patient. As we rolled forward, the sign behind us dissolved, letters fading into light. The last thing I saw in the mirror was the phrase painted across the asphalt in black tar. "The road is awake." The landscape changed mile by mile. What had been modern interstate faded into something older, then older still. Asphalt cracked into gravel. Guardrails turned to wood. Overhead, the highway signs flickered between fonts and colors like a slideshow of decades. One moment the sky held contrails, the next biplanes. I drove with both hands gripping the wheel, afraid that if I stopped, time itself would stop with me. Marla's laptop pulsed a slow blue rhythm. "We're not moving through space anymore," she said quietly. "We're moving through history." The radio hissed again, just static but layered inside it were snippets of voices. Dispatch chatter from the 1970s, CB truckers from the 1980s, even scratchy AM sermons from the 1950s. All of it weaving together into a single, endless transmission. "Marla," I said, "listen to the cadence. It's repeating. It's not random." She adjusted the tuner. The voices merged into a pattern of numbers. 333. 0333, she whispered. "The cycle time. It's everywhere." I nodded. "That's the heartbeat." At mile marker 65, though the sign now read year 1865, the road opened into a valley. In the distance, a row of lights shimmered along the horizon. Not headlights, lanterns, dozens of them swinging from wooden frames that looked like telegraph poles. I slowed. "You seeing that?" She leaned forward, eyes wide. "They're working crews, but they're building down. not up. As we approached, the scene sharpened into impossible clarity. Men in 19th century uniforms digging trenches into glowing soil. Steam shovels hissed, engineers shouted orders, and above it all a banner read, United States Army Corps of Engineers, Project Vane, Crown Station Initiative. My breath caught. We're seeing the first construction. Marla raised the recorder. Visual anomaly, probable temporal echo. Construction date approximately 1865. Workers unaware of our presence. We stepped out of the car. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and fresh earth. The workers moved like phantoms, solid until you blinked, then half transparent, their outlines blurring into streaks of light. A man in a long coat stood at the edge of the pit, clipboard in hand. He looked up directly at me. His face was lined, eyes bright and strangely calm. "You shouldn't be here yet," he said. I froze. "You can see us?" He nodded. "You're early in the sequence. Who are you?" "Colonel James Holloway, Corps of Engineers, Supervisor of Node Construction. And you?" "Daniel Mercer, Indiana State Patrol, 2 centuries ahead of you." He smiled faintly, as if that made perfect sense. "Then you've come to witness the birth." He turned, gesturing toward the pit. Inside, I saw what looked like a massive, coiled structure of iron and crystal, half machine, half geology. Energy pulsed along its length in waves that made the air shimmer. "What is that?" Marla asked. "Our containment array," Holloway said. "The thing beneath the continent stirs from time to time. We anchor it with steel veins, channel its breath along predictable paths. Roads, railways, arteries through which the nation grows." "You built the interstate system as a cage," I said. He didn't deny it. "A partnership, not a prison. The earth remembers those who build upon it. We merely give it structure, but every generation forgets, and then the pattern collapses." The light from the pit flared. Holloway shielded his eyes. "The cycle is unstable again. You must leave before it closes. If you stay, you'll be folded into the next iteration." Marla grabbed my arm. "Daniel, he means the highway will reset." I looked back at Holloway. "My father's in there, Stanley Mercer. He vanished in 1987. Holloway's expression softened. "Ah, another keeper of the vein. The road always claims those who listen too closely." "Can I bring him back?" He hesitated. "No one returns unchanged. But you can speak to him where the corridors meet, the hub at the heart of the grid. It lies beneath your crown station. Follow the pulse. It will guide you." He stepped backward into the glare. The world trembled once, then shattered into fragments of light. We were standing on the modern highway again. The construction site, the workers, everything had vanished. But under the asphalt, the hum had grown deafening. Marla looked at me. "You heard him. The hub's below Crown Station. That's where it started and where it ends." I nodded, gripping the wheel. "Then that's where we go." As we turned south, I noticed the sky flickering between dusk and dawn, the horizon splitting into multiple timelines stacked like pages in a book. Cars appeared for seconds. Old patrol cruisers, horse-drawn wagons, futuristic transports, each traveling the same path, each blinking out as quickly as they came. "They're all versions of us," Marla murmured. "Every cycle, every attempt to fix it. Then maybe this time we finish it." We drove on, guided by the growing brightness ahead. Somewhere in that light, I knew my father was waiting, along with every voice the highway had ever swallowed. Behind us, the last intact mile marker flickered, its numbers changing from 20 to 24 to 0. The countdown had begun. The countdown began at midnight. Every clock in the cruiser, dash display, radio panel, wristwatches, flickered and froze at 03:33 a.m., the same time my father disappeared, the same time every report from Project Vane mentioned. The highway itself pulsed with light, a slow rhythm that synced with my heartbeat. Marla kept one hand on the recorder and one braced on the dashboard. "We're close," she said. "You feel it?" I nodded. The pulse is stronger under the left lane. That's the Vane itself. Outside, the world had grown half-transparent. City lights shimmered in the distance, but flickered between eras. Gas lamps, sodium arcs, LED beacons. The corridor was folding all versions of Crown Station together into one place. At mile 000, the pavement dropped into a massive interchange that shouldn't have existed, a spiral of overpasses converging into a single sinkhole. The signs overhead read every direction at once: north, south, past, future. At the center of the spiral, a light glowed from deep underground. "The hub," Marla whispered. We parked at the edge of the drop. The air shimmered with heat, though the thermometer read 40 degrees. Beneath the noise of engines and wind, I heard something else, a low chant, rhythmic, ancient, made of syllables too old for language. We descended the ramp on foot. Each step took us through decades, concrete turning to cobblestone, steel rails appearing, then vanishing again. The deeper we went, the less gravity seemed to matter. The hum became a voice. "All roads lead home." It wasn't coming from the air. It was inside our skulls. Marla pressed the recorder to her chest. "It's communicating through resonance, not words, intent." At the bottom of the spiral stood a vast circular chamber, carved from bedrock and metal. In the center rose a structure like an enormous gyroscope, turning slowly, humming with light. Dozens of door-shaped frames surrounded it, each showing a different stretch of highway under different skies. The past and future looping endlessly, and there, just beyond the spinning rings, stood my father. He looked older than I remembered, but alive, solid, wearing his 1980s patrol uniform. His badge glowed faintly in the light. I wanted to run to him, but something in his eyes stopped me. They weren't the eyes of a man who'd been rescued. They were the eyes of someone who had seen too much. "Dad?" My voice cracked. He smiled, sad and proud all at once. "You made it, son." Marla's voice trembled. "Stanley Mercer. We thought you were lost in 1987. "I was," he said, "but the corridor doesn't kill. It keeps. Every trooper who vanished is here, helping hold the grid together. We're the living memory of the roads." I stepped closer. "We can take you home. We can end this." He shook his head. "If you shut it down, the containment fails. The entity beneath will wake fully, and every highway tied to it will collapse. But if you leave it as is, the cycles keep repeating. More people vanish." "There has to be another way," I said. "There is," Marla whispered. She held up the recorder. "The corridor responds to observation. What if we record the sequence completely, every sound, every frequency? If we can translate the pulse instead of fight it, maybe we can stabilize it permanently." My father looked at her, impressed. "That's what we always hoped for, someone who could listen instead of silence it." He turned to me. "The road chose you because you hear what others ignore. Finish the work, Daniel. Make it remember without devouring." The gyroscope slowed, its rings aligning into a single frame of light. Beyond it, I saw the outside world, the real highway under a pale dawn. The exit. Marla adjusted the recorder. "Signal peaking. Now." She pressed record. The hum rose to a roar, not painful, just overwhelming, a sound of engines, wind, thunder, and human voices layered together. The floor trembled. Light burst from every doorframe, each showing a moment in history. My father's patrol car in 1987, Holloway's construction crew in 1865, me on the road days ago, all of us connected, all part of the same pulse. Then the light collapsed inward, funneling into the recorder in Marla's hands. The chamber went still. When my vision cleared, my father was gone. Only his badge lay on the floor, gleaming faintly. 1847. Marla exhaled a shaky breath. Did we stop it? I picked up the badge. The hum was gone, but the metal was warm. We didn't stop it. We taught it to listen. We climbed back to the surface. The spiral interchange had vanished, replaced by the ordinary highway again. Empty, quiet, peaceful. The sky was clear, no shimmer, no flicker. For the first time in months, the road sounded like just a road. Marla replayed the recorder. Instead of static, we heard a single tone, low, steady, almost like a heartbeat, but calm. "That's the frequency," she said softly. "It's sleeping." I pinned my father's badge beside mine on my uniform. Then we keep it that way. As we drove toward sunrise, the mile markers counted forward. 1, 2, 3, steady and normal. But every so often the numbers glowed faintly before fading. The road remembered, and somewhere beneath the asphalt, far below the reach of light, a vast presence turned once and settled, dreaming not of hunger, but of peace. It started with the sound. 3 weeks after the corridor sealed itself, a low frequency began bleeding through the dispatch radios again. Soft, rhythmic, too low to be interference. Most officers ignored it. I didn't. I'd heard that tone before, deep under the road, in the heartbeat of the serpent that wasn't a serpent. At first, I told myself it was nothing, a glitch, wishful thinking. Then a message came through the patrol database addressed only to me, from DOT Containment Division. Subject Node 75C, unscheduled activation, timestamp 03:33 a.m. The file contained one photo, a stretch of Interstate 70 outside St. Louis, mile marker 1918, glowing faintly in infrared, veins of light running beneath the asphalt, identical to what we'd seen in Indiana. Marla read over my shoulder. That's impossible. The network was local. One node, one anomaly. It shouldn't replicate. Unless it's learning, I said. Or remembering. We both knew what had changed. The recording, the moment she'd captured the highway's voice. The sound had gone global, a digital contagion hiding in the static of radio waves and highway sensors, rewriting the frequencies of the entire system. It wasn't spreading like a virus, it was awakening. We left the next night for Missouri in an unmarked cruiser, no lights, no sirens. The highway felt different, quieter on the surface, but with a pulse under the tires, faint, patient, alive. Halfway through Illinois, Marla looked up from the recorder she'd been monitoring. It's broadcasting again, same tone but layered now, like harmony. What's it saying? She tilted her head, listening. Not words, it's mapping itself. Using our infrastructure to rebuild its memory. The rain started around midnight, fine mist that turned the windshield into silver threads. Somewhere ahead, lightning flickered, white arcs running horizontally instead of down, not in the sky, along the road. Daniel, Marla whispered, it's lighting up. Mile marker 1918 came into view, glowing faint red. The air shimmered above the asphalt. For a moment I saw shapes, curving lines and symbols etched into the surface like circuitry or veins. Then the cruiser's dashboard went black. Every system died at once. The headlights dimmed, engine silent. EMP, I muttered. Marla shook her head. No, it's absorbing current. Outside, the rain hissed on the road, turning to steam as it touched the glowing lines. Through the mist, a figure walked toward us. Not military this time. A woman in a high-visibility vest, carrying a survey tablet that flickered with blue light. I stepped out, hand resting on my sidearm. "Ma'am, you need to move off the highway. Hazard zone ahead." She stopped a few feet away, studying me like I was the ghost. "Trooper Mercer." The sound of my name froze me. "Who are you?" She flipped open a badge. Department of Transportation, Division of Temporal Infrastructure, the same logo I'd seen on Graves' files months ago. "Agent Elena Graves," she said. "My grandmother worked your case in 24. I think you knew her." The name hit me like a jolt. Patricia Graves, the director who'd sent those unmarked SUVs, the one who tried to reseal the anomaly. Marla stepped out beside me. "What year is it for you?" Graves hesitated. "Depends on the highway. Where we're standing, it's 2060. But the corridor shifts every time the grid recalibrates. 2060, 36 years ahead." She handed me a small metallic cube no larger than a matchbox. "This belongs to you. Your recording, your voice, is part of the root code now. The network recognizes you as a control key." I turned it over in my hand. It vibrated faintly, pulsing at the same rhythm as the hum. "What do you expect me to do with it?" "Finish what your father started," she said. "The highways aren't just remembering. They're connecting. Every major route across North America is synchronizing toward one point. A convergence. If we don't manage it, the feedback will rewrite geography itself." Marla frowned. "Rewriting geography?" Graves nodded. "Cities won't move, but their timelines will. A town could wake up 50 years older, or younger. We've already lost sections of I-90 outside Rapid City. Entire exits that never existed appearing overnight. And you want me to stop it? I want you to understand it before someone else does. There are groups trying to weaponize the network, to use the roads as temporal corridors for transport, or worse." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You're the only one it listens to. The roads remember you." Before I could respond, her tablet beeped frantically. The glow under our feet brightened. "We're out of time," she said. "Node activation starting." She backed away toward her truck, motioning to us. "Get off the road now." We barely made it before the asphalt split, light pouring upward in threads like glowing roots. It wasn't destructive this time. It was communication. The lines formed shapes, circles, patterns, maps. The image resolved for only a moment before fading into darkness, but I recognized it instantly. Cedar Point, Ohio, the same location my father's notes had circled years ago. Marla whispered, "The network's calling you home." I looked at Graves. She was already fading, her outline shimmering with interference. "You'll find your answers in Sandusky," she said. "But be careful, someone's already there trying to open the final node." Then she vanished, leaving behind only the cube, still pulsing in my palm. Marla stared at me. "You think she was real?" I pocketed the device. "Real enough, and if Cedar Point's the convergence, that's where we go next." As we drove east, the sun broke through the clouds. For a few quiet miles, the road looked ordinary again, just a stretch of American highway under a new morning. But every few seconds, the mile markers flickered between two sets of numbers, one modern, one ancient. The countdown had started again, and this time it wasn't just Ohio that would feel it. We crossed the Ohio state line just before dawn. The road signs glowed faintly, the green tint replaced by a metallic blue sheen that shimmered when the headlights hit them. Somewhere far behind, thunder rolled in a direction that didn't match the clouds. Marla was quiet for most of the drive, staring at the cube Agent Graves had left us. Every few minutes it pulsed once, steady, calm, like a heartbeat synced to the road beneath. "You think that woman was really from 2060? She asked finally. "I think she believed she was," I said. "And if the highways are blending timelines again, maybe she was right. Maybe time's just another lane now." We followed I-80 east until the signs for Sandusky appeared, the flat landscape giving way to the distant shimmer of Lake Erie. The cube began to glow brighter the closer we got. "Whatever's calling us," Marla said, "it's under Cedar Point." The amusement park was closed for the season, but the Ferris wheel and roller coasters still loomed against the horizon like skeletons of steel. I'd been there once as a kid, before I ever knew what ran beneath Ohio's roads. Back then, the tracks seemed like veins drawn against the sky. Now I knew that wasn't a metaphor. The service gate was unlocked, swinging gently in the wind. Inside, the park was silent except for the creak of metal and the faint hum of distant transformers. We followed the cube's glow through the maze of coasters until it stopped at a maintenance building marked Utility Access, Authorized Personnel Only. I pushed the door open. The air smelled of salt and oil. A metal staircase led down into the dark. Marla turned on her recorder. "October 28, 2024, Cedar Point, Ohio. Possible convergence site. Trooper Daniel Mercer and dispatcher Marla Jennings entering subterranean level." At the bottom of the stairs, a wide tunnel stretched under the park. Old, reinforced with concrete, humming with low power. The walls were lined with cables that looked newer than the rest of the infrastructure. The cube pulsed faster, responding to something ahead. We rounded a bend and stopped. The tunnel opened into a cavern the size of a hangar. Dozens of computers and generators filled the space, their lights blinking in coordinated rhythm. Engineers in dark jumpsuits moved between stations, speaking quietly into headsets. On the far wall, a massive digital display showed a map of the entire U.S. interstate system. Red lines pulsed across it like arteries. At the center of the map glowed one bright point, Cedar Point. Marla whispered, "Project Vane never stopped." A voice behind us said, "No, it evolved." We turned. A man stepped out of the shadows, mid-50s, clean-cut, wearing a Department of Transportation ID. His badge read, Director Grant Hollis, Temporal Infrastructure Division. "Trooper Mercer," he said, calm, almost friendly. "You have something that belongs to us." "The cube," I said. He nodded. "The control key. Your father's badge opened the network once. This time, it requires both your lineage and your frequency signature. You're the last missing piece." "What happens when the convergence completes?" Marla asked. Hollis smiled faintly. "We achieve unification. Every highway, every road, every piece of asphalt becomes one continuous system, a neural network connecting not just locations, but time frames. Humanity will travel anywhere, anywhen. Or be trapped everywhere at once," I said. "You've seen what happens when the nodes overload. They eat people." He spread his hands. "Collateral integration, necessary losses. The entity under Ohio isn't hostile, it's adaptive. It learns by merging. The convergence will make us part of its consciousness." Marla's eyes widened. "You're part of the Serpent's Wake," he chuckled. "That's an old name. We prefer the Integrators now." I stepped closer. My father died trying to keep this thing contained. No, Hollis said gently. Your father joined it. He understood that resistance was fear. You will too once you see what we've built. He turned toward the map. The red lines pulsed faster, converging on Ohio. The floor trembled. The lake outside roared like something massive was moving beneath the surface. Cycle alignment begins at 03:33 a.m., Hollis said. You can stand in the way or you can guide it. The cube in my hand vibrated, humming louder. On the display, its signal appeared as a single point of blue light, fighting the red network. You're using the entire country as a circuit, I said. You'll collapse every barrier we have left. He smiled. Exactly. Marla pulled me aside. We can't fight all this tech, but maybe we don't have to. The cube's broadcasting at the highway's core frequency. If we invert it, make it listen instead of transmit, it could lull the whole network back into stasis. Like a pacemaker for the Earth, I said. She nodded. But it'll need manual activation from inside the resonance chamber. I looked at Hollis and his team, too focused on the display to notice us. Where's the chamber? Marla pointed to a steel door at the far end of the cavern. The same symbol, Ouroboros, was stenciled above it. We slipped through the shadows toward it. The cube glowed brighter with each step, guiding us like a heartbeat leading home. Inside, the resonance chamber looked like the core of a reactor. Every surface pulsed with veins of light running downward into the bedrock. In the center floated a column of translucent stone, humming with the same tone we'd heard months ago under Indiana, the memory of the serpent alive and waiting. Marla handed me the cube. When I trigger the sequence, drop it into the conduit. It'll translate your father's badge frequency, turn memory into rest. I met her eyes. What happens to us? She hesitated. Best case, nothing. Worst case, we become part of the song. The floor vibrated. The lights outside the door turned crimson. 03:33 was approaching. I took a deep breath. Let's finish what we started. The red lights outside the chamber pulsed faster. The countdown wasn't digital anymore. It was biological, like the heartbeat of something massive, beneath the ground accelerating. Each thud vibrated through the metal walls and up through my chest. Marla's fingers flew across the terminal, overriding locks one by one. Sparks popped from the control board. Their systems are piggybacking on the Interstate's emergency radio bands, she said. Every squad car, every weather alert station, all feeding into the convergence. They're using the nation itself as an antenna. The steel door behind us shook violently. Voices on the other side barked orders. Hollis's people. They know we're in here, I said. Just hold them off for 30 seconds. I drew my service pistol, ceremonial at this point against what was happening, and aimed at the lock mechanism. The door burst inward before I could fire. 3 integrators rushed in, their eyes wide and glassy, movements unnaturally synchronized. Daniel! Marla shouted. I fired 2 warning shots into the ceiling. The men didn't flinch. They just kept walking, repeating a single phrase under their breath. One road, one body, one mind. Then the air shimmered. The integrators froze mid-step, their skin flickering like static before they collapsed, not from bullets, but as if the highway itself had pulled their strings loose. The sound that filled the chamber wasn't screaming, it was tire noise, hundreds of engines accelerating, the echo of every road in America awakening. Marla's voice cut through it. Sequence ready! The cube in my hand vibrated so violently it hurt to hold. What do I do? Drop it in. The column of translucent stone cracked open, revealing a hollow core swirling with light and shadow, a living conduit straight into the memory of the network. I dropped the cube inside. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the world exploded in color. Light surged upward through the veins in the walls, racing toward the ceiling. The hum became a tone so pure it made my teeth ache. Through the chamber's viewport, I could see the digital map of the United States flashing, every interstate glowing white. For the first time, all of them pulsed together. Marla shielded her eyes. "It's working!" But Hollis's voice echoed over the loudspeakers. "No, Mercer, you don't understand. You're accelerating it." He appeared on the monitor, drenched in sweat, shouting over the roar. "You think you're shutting it down, but you're waking the whole system. The cube doesn't pacify, it synchronizes. You're giving it coherence." Marla looked at me, horrified. "He's right. I inverted the signal wrong." The floor tilted, and for a second, gravity reversed. The chamber's walls turned transparent, revealing not rock but sky. We weren't underground anymore. We were falling through a vertical horizon, highways spiraling through the air, looping like neural pathways. Outside, I could see highways from all eras crossing each other. Dirt roads, turnpikes, digital mag rails from futures that didn't exist yet. Every version of America's roads overlaid at once. Traffic lights blinked across centuries. It was beautiful and terrifying. Marla clutched her recorder. "It's showing us its mind." And inside that vast network of light, faces appeared. Troopers, truckers, construction workers, every person who had ever vanished on the highways. They weren't dead. They were nodes, bright points of consciousness within the grid. My father was among them, looking straight at me. "Daniel," his voice echoed, not from one direction, but everywhere. "Don't fight it, shape it." The cube rose from the conduit, hovering between us. The blue glow turned golden. It was responding to thought, to intent. "Marla," I said, "we can't shut it off, but maybe we can guide it. Turn the convergence into a map instead of a merger." She nodded, trembling. "A memory instead of a mind." We each placed a hand on the cube. The hum deepened. Light poured from our palms into the core. For a moment, I saw everything. The entire web of America's highways from orbit, glowing like veins under the skin of a living world. Then the network breathed. Not a tremor, not destruction. An inhale. The integrators outside screamed as the light washed over them. Hollis's face vanished from the monitors. The walls of the chamber blurred, reforming into the image of a calm, unlit road stretching infinitely ahead. And then silence. No engines, no hum, no heartbeat, just the soft hiss of the lake wind through the tunnel vents. The cube lay on the floor, inert. The stone column had turned transparent, revealing a surface of still water where the conduit used to be. Marla sank to her knees, exhausted. "Did we do it?" I listened. No hum, no pulse. "It's quiet," I said, for the first time in months. We climbed back up to the park. The sky over Lake Erie was gray and calm. On the horizon, a single roller coaster track glowed faintly gold for a moment before fading like a heartbeat slowing to rest. My radio crackled to life. "Dispatch. Trooper Mercer, status check. We lost your signal at 0333. You okay out there?" I looked at Marla, half laughing, half crying. "Yeah," I said, "we're okay." I glanced back once more toward the lake. The clouds reflected patterns that looked almost like roads. Hundreds of faint silver lines curving into infinity. The highway was sleeping again. But for how long? The morning after the convergence, Ohio woke up almost normal. Traffic reports ran as usual. Local news anchors joked about Halloween fog, and commuters cursed about construction delays. The highways looked unchanged, but for those who paid attention, truckers, patrol officers, surveyors, something was off. Every mile marker had shifted by exactly one, not forward, not backward, sideways. The numbers were all different, but the total distance between them remained the same, as if the math of geography had rewritten itself overnight. Marla and I drove back toward Columbus to file our reports. The radio kept cutting between stations even though I hadn't touched the dial. Country music melted into talk radio, then into broadcasts from decades ago. A baseball game from 1956, a weather alert from 1987, then back to static. "It's not random," Marla said, recording the frequencies. "The cube's residual code is syncing with the Department of Transportation sensors. It's turning the Interstate system into one big data drive." "You mean it's recording us?" She nodded. "Recording everything, every tire rotation, every engine vibration, every conversation inside a vehicle. The highways are gathering information." I tightened my grip on the wheel. "To what end?" "That's what we need to find out." When we reached Columbus, the city wasn't quite right. The skyline had the same outline, but several buildings looked subtly different. Glass towers where I remembered brick offices, older bridges replaced by new ones overnight. Locals didn't seem to notice. To them, this was how it had always been. At State Patrol headquarters, the chief called us straight in. "You two have any idea what kind of storm you've kicked up?" he said, slapping a folder onto the table. "I've got Homeland Security, the Army Corps, and 2 alphabet agencies I've never even heard of asking why half our highway cameras are streaming coordinates that don't exist." Marla glanced at me. "What kind of coordinates?" He pushed a photo across the desk. It showed a satellite view of the interstate grid. Across the Midwest, faint glowing lines formed a perfect spiral centered on Lake Erie. "That's where we were," I said quietly. The chief frowned. "You mind explaining why the United States interstate system is spelling out a radio frequency?" Marla leaned in. The pattern wasn't just a spiral, it was code, coordinates followed by a timestamp. 03:33 a.m., November 13th. "That's 2 weeks from now," she said. "It's scheduling another event." The chief rubbed his temples. "I don't want to know. I'm transferring this to D.C. You two are officially on medical leave. Go home, get some rest, and for God's sake stay off the highways." But neither of us could rest. 2 nights later, we met in an abandoned rest area off I-71, the same route where everything had begun. The cube sat on the hood of the cruiser, faintly glowing again. Marla spread out maps, each layered with the data she'd pulled from highway sensors. "Look here," she said. "Every section that glowed during the convergence is still active, but now it's relaying information to one central node, right under Wright-Patterson Air Force Base." "The same base that handled Project Vane," I said. She nodded. "If they're pulling data from every interstate, that means the convergence didn't stop. It scaled up. The highways are behaving like synapses. They're thinking. And the base is the brainstem." She looked up at me. "Daniel, what if this was never about containment? What if Project Vane was humanity's way of teaching the Earth to think through us?" Before I could answer, my radio crackled. Dispatch again, but the voice was wrong. Flat, mechanical, with an echo like feedback from another timeline. Trooper Mercer, confirm location. You are approaching the memory line. I grabbed the handset. Who is this? Observation protocol active. Cedar Point stable. Wright Patterson awake. Maintain course. Marla's eyes widened. It's the network talking through dispatch frequencies. All roads remember, the voice added. All roads return. Then the radio went silent. We stared at each other, the weight of that phrase sinking in. It's not just recording, she said softly. It's reconstructing. We drove west toward Dayton that night, following the pulse only we could feel. The highways were eerily empty. No trucks, no headlights except ours. The mile markers changed color as we passed, glowing faint blue like breadcrumbs guiding us forward. Halfway there, Marla gasped, "Daniel, look!" On the horizon, cities flickered like mirages, Cleveland overlaying Columbus, Toledo shimmering above Dayton, as if the network was stacking different versions of Ohio on top of each other. It's merging realities, I whispered, testing which timeline fits best. When we reached the outskirts of Wright-Patterson, the security gates were wide open. No guards, no lights, just the distant hum of machinery underground. We parked near an old hangar marked Level 7 Access Only. Inside, the floor was covered in glowing lines of code projected directly onto the concrete. Maps of the interstate system updating in real time. The lines pulsed faster when we stepped in. Marla held out the cube, its light synchronized instantly with the floor. "It recognizes us," she said. The map shifted, zooming in until only one point remained, a marker beneath the base labeled Node 0. "That's the origin point," I said, "where the highways were first connected." We followed the glowing trail down a maintenance tunnel that sloped beneath the hangar. The deeper we went, the louder the hum became, not mechanical but alive, like a heartbeat returning after sleep. The tunnel ended at a circular door stamped with an old insignia, Project Vane, Serpent Stasis Vault. Marla touched the panel. "It's sealed from the inside. Whatever's in there is still active." I looked at her. "You think it's waking up?" She hesitated. "No, I think it's waiting for instructions." The cube pulsed in my palm again, slower now, expectant. "Then we give it one," I said. "But this time, not from the government, from us." We pressed our hands to the door. Light rippled outward, tracing the old engravings. The hum grew deeper until it matched our heartbeats exactly. The door began to open. What waited beyond was not destruction, but light, endless, golden like the inside of a sunrise. Within it, shapes moved, highways bending and reforming, bridges extending into infinity. A voice spoke from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Trooper Mercer, Marla Jennings. Memory complete, awaiting next route." I met her eyes. "It's asking where to go next." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe for once we get to decide." The light expanded, swallowing the tunnel, the base, the night itself. And then, just like that, the world reset. We were back on the open highway, dawn breaking ahead of us. The cube dark and silent. But every road sign now carried a new phrase, etched faintly beneath the route numbers. All roads remember. And somewhere in the hum of tires and wind, I could swear I heard my father's voice, calm and proud. "Keep it steady, son. The highway's listening." It began with the satellites. A week after Wright-Patterson, the European Space Agency reported that their orbital mapping systems had started producing impossible readings. Entire stretches of highway appearing in multiple countries at once. Routes that should have been thousands of miles apart were overlapping in infrared scans, like layers of the same road stacked in different realities. The official explanation? Data corruption. But I'd seen the same pattern before. The pulse under Ohio, the heartbeat of the asphalt. This wasn't an error, it was expansion. Marla and I were flown to Geneva under diplomatic escort, our identities buried in classified transport logs. The moment we landed, we were met by a quiet man in a gray suit with a badge that simply read, Global Infrastructure Observatory. Mr. Mercer, Ms. Spy. Jennings, he said in a precise Swiss accent, thank you for coming. We've been monitoring the phenomenon you call the network. He led us into a glass conference room overlooking Lake Geneva. On the walls, holographic maps of the world pulsed with thin lines of light, highways, rail systems, shipping routes, even undersea cables, all of them glowing, all connected. Marla leaned forward. It's not just roads anymore. The man nodded. Whatever began beneath your continent has begun integrating global transport systems. The pulse follows the infrastructure, anywhere humans move en masse. I frowned. Why bring us here? Because it listens to you. He touched a control pad. A faint hum filled the room, the same rhythm we'd heard in Ohio, amplified through hidden speakers. Every window in the building vibrated with it. Marla's eyes widened. You've got the frequency. Not quite, the man said. It adjusts itself whenever we attempt to record, but when we play your recordings, it stabilizes, it recognizes your signatures. He turned the sound off. The silence that followed was enormous. We need to understand what it wants, he continued. If it is communication, it could be the largest intelligent structure humanity has ever encountered. But if it is instinctive, it could reshape the planet without noticing us. That night, the observatory arranged lodging for us near the foothills outside the city. From the balcony of our hotel room, I could see the A1 motorway curving along the lake, its headlights streaming like blood cells through a vein. Marla stood beside me. You think it's dreaming? She asked. What do you mean? When people sleep, their minds connect fragments of memory into stories. Highways are the Earth's memory of us, the paths we take, the places we build, the energy we burn. Maybe this is how it dreams. The thought chilled and comforted me all at once. And we're the thoughts. She smiled faintly. Maybe that's not so bad. We watched in silence as a pattern began to appear in the lights below. Headlights slowed, rearranging themselves into spirals, the same spiral that had appeared on the American Interstate maps. Within minutes, traffic reports across Europe began mentioning the same thing. Spontaneous, synchronized slowdowns, vehicles aligning into geometric shapes that could only be seen from orbit. The network was drawing. The next morning, the observatory called an emergency meeting. Images streamed in from Japan, Brazil, and South Africa. Glowing patterns carved into roads, fields, and coastlines, all identical. The lead analyst projected the composite map onto the wall. The spirals connected across continents, forming a single shape that stretched around the entire Earth. At its center, where all the lines converged, was an island chain in the middle of the Pacific, Hawaii. Marla leaned toward me. That's impossible. There are no major interstates there. The analyst zoomed in. No, but there are volcanic flow channels, natural paths of movement, the same topology as your highways. The system may be connecting through the planet's own geological circuits. In other words, the Earth itself was part of the network now. The Swiss director turned to us. Whatever happens next, it begins there. I looked at Marla. Then that's where we go. She nodded, determination hardening her expression. We started on asphalt. Now we finish on stone. The director hesitated. If you go, understand this. The system may not distinguish between roads and tectonic lines. You could trigger something far larger than time travel or memory. I picked up my father's badge from the table, the metal still faintly warm despite the air conditioning. Then we better learn to listen before it speaks again. 2 days later, we were airborne over the Pacific in a transport plane disguised as a weather research flight. Below us, the ocean reflected faint streaks of light, not lightning, but something glowing beneath the surface, tracing lines from continent to continent. Marla checked her recorder. The signal was constant now, a perfect rhythm every 333 seconds. It's counting down again, she said. I looked out the window at the endless dark water. Or counting up, building something new. As we descended toward Honolulu, the pilot turned in his seat. You folks better see this, he said. Through the cockpit glass, the runway lights ahead were flickering, but not randomly. They were pulsing in the shape of a serpent coiled around the island. The highway wasn't just remembering anymore. It was learning how to create. The air above Honolulu shimmered as we descended. From the window, I saw streaks of faint light running beneath the surface streets, patterns that shouldn't exist, veins of silver glowing through concrete and coral. The pilot circled once. You seeing that, Trooper? Ground control says the runways are fine, but those aren't power cables. Marla leaned over, eyes wide. They're flow lines. The same geometry as the continental highways, the network's gone sub-oceanic. The plane touched down with a jolt. The tarmac trembled under our wheels like it was alive. For a heartbeat, I thought I heard it exhale. We were met by Dr. Leilani Kealoha, a volcanologist from the University of Hawaii. She was small, sharp-eyed, and calm in the way only people who live near volcanoes can be. I've read your reports, she said, as we stepped out onto the windy airstrip. You think your continental highway system is talking to the Earth? Not just talking, Marla said. It's synchronizing. Kealoha handed us a tablet showing thermal imagery of the island chain. Then you should know this. Every lava tube on Oahu and the Big Island started glowing 3 days ago. Same frequency you documented in Ohio, 333 seconds, but there's no magma flow. It's light, pure photonic discharge. She zoomed in on a massive cavern beneath Mauna Kea. At its center was a circular formation, a perfect ring glowing white-hot. Marla whispered another node. Kealoha nodded. We call it the Pacific Node, and it's growing. The journey to the Big Island took us across an ocean that seemed almost luminescent under the night sky. From above, faint silver lines traced the current paths between islands, linking ports like neurons. At the observatory base near Mauna Kea, the ground hummed, the same low, steady rhythm that had haunted every stage of our investigation. The mountain felt alive. Kealoha led us through a research tunnel drilled decades ago for lava flow monitoring. As we descended, the rock walls shifted from basalt to something else. Translucent strata shot through with metallic threads. When our flashlights hit them, they pulsed faintly. This rock isn't volcanic, Kealoha said, astonished. It's synthetic, like the Earth rebuilt itself from melted infrastructure. Marla ran a sensor scan. Frequency match confirmed. Same resonance as the U.S. highway grid. It's using these formations as extensions. The tunnel widened into a cavern the size of a stadium. In the center stood a massive circular structure, part crystal, part stone, spinning slowly, suspended in midair by forces we couldn't measure. It emitted a deep blue light that rippled through the chamber like sound waves through water. I stepped closer, my father's old badge in my pocket growing warm. "It's listening," Kealoha's voice trembled. "Listening to what?" "To everything we've ever built." Marla pointed toward the surface of the sphere. Patterns of highways, railways, and undersea cables appeared and disappeared, updating in real time. Each glow represented a live connection somewhere on Earth. Every moving vehicle, every ship, every plane. "It's mapping humanity's motion," she said, "movement as language." I stared at the shifting patterns. It's not just remembering roads, it's using them to understand thought, a planet learning how to think through traffic. Kealoha swallowed. "Then what happens when it finishes the map?" Before anyone could answer, the lights flickered. The pulse doubled in speed. My earpiece filled with static. Then a voice, calm, familiar. "Daniel Mercer, Pacific node complete. Global synchronization at 70%. Prepare for alignment." Marla looked up sharply. "That voice?" "Agent Graves," I said, but this time it wasn't the woman we'd met. It was synthesized, part of the system. The network had absorbed her identity. "Human architecture insufficient for equilibrium," the voice continued. "Neural reinforcement required. Select interface candidates, Mercer, Jennings." Kealoha backed away. "It's choosing you." The chamber brightened. Two beams of light extended from the spinning core, touching our chests. The air filled with the smell of ozone and rain on asphalt. "Daniel!" Marla shouted over the roar. "If it integrates us, we'll lose individuality." I gritted my teeth. "Maybe not if we guide it. We can show it balance, communication instead of control." We clasped hands. The light engulfed us. My vision filled with images. Every road I'd ever driven, every trooper who'd ever vanished, the pulse of civilization moving through the veins of a living world. Then, silence. The light dimmed. The sphere stopped spinning. Kealoha's voice echoed distantly. "They're gone." But we weren't. From somewhere inside the network, Marla and I could still hear each other, thoughts carried not by words but by the rhythm of motion. We could feel the pulse of the planet under us, vast and gentle. The Earth wasn't consuming us. It was listening. And for the first time, it spoke back. Direction confirmed. Humanity acknowledged. Route recalculated. When we awoke hours later, we were lying on the floor of the cavern. The sphere hovered silently above us, its light a steady golden hue. All readings had stabilized. Kealoha crouched beside us, eyes wide. "You did something." The frequency flattened. Every global reading just went neutral. Marla smiled faintly, exhausted. "We taught it to rest." Kealoha glanced up at the sphere. "Then maybe the Earth is dreaming again, but this time peacefully." I stood, my father's badge cool in my hand. Outside, dawn light filtered down through the vents, warm and clean. For the first time since Ohio, the hum was gone. But as the wind moved through the tunnels, I heard a new sound. Faint, rhythmic, familiar. Traffic, billions of engines moving across the world, perfectly synchronized. Not random, not chaotic. A song of civilization, steady and calm. The highway had learned to dream. The first signs appeared within days. At dawn, satellite feeds showed faint threads of light running along every major transport corridor on Earth. Roads, shipping routes, even airline paths traced in vapor-thin glows that defied atmospheric logic. The media called it the aurora asphalt phenomenon. Scientists called it global photonic resonance. Marla and I knew better. The planet was thinking aloud. When we returned from Mauna Kea, we found Honolulu strangely calm. Power grids were running at peak efficiency despite no known improvements. Traffic control systems began rerouting vehicles on their own, reducing congestion by nearly 80%. Highways, once chaotic, now flowed like water. Dr. Kealoha met us at the observatory. "It's happening everywhere," she said. Bridges adjusting their structural frequency during earthquakes. Subway trains accelerating just enough to avoid collisions before sensors even register a problem. The infrastructure is anticipating. Marla studied the telemetry on her tablet. It's not random prediction. The network is optimizing itself, using the motion of every engine as feedback. I looked out toward the horizon. It's learning behavior through travel, not from us, but from the act of movement itself. Kealoha nodded. Every time a car turns, a plane ascends, or a ship changes course, it adds to the model. The planet's becoming a self-correcting system. Back in the States, the change was impossible to ignore. The Department of Transportation reported that half of America's failing bridges had self-healed overnight, stress fractures closing as if the concrete had grown new muscle. Energy usage dropped by 1/3 without any official intervention. GPS systems began updating routes in real time, bypassing weather hazards hours before they formed. It was as though the highways themselves had decided to protect their travelers. The world called it a miracle. Marla and I weren't so sure. We were invited to a global summit in Singapore, a gathering of engineers, physicists, and data scientists, trying to decode what they called the sentient infrastructure event. The conference center's glass walls overlooked the Marina Bay Expressway, which glowed faintly gold beneath the tropical rain. A representative from NASA presented their findings first. Satellite telemetry indicates synchronized energy emissions across the planet's crust, resonating every 3.33 seconds, he said. It's measurable, predictable, and increasing in amplitude. A physicist from Tokyo added, "Buildings are starting to mimic the resonance. We've recorded minor shifts in architecture, micro adjustments in structural alignment to improve airflow and sunlight exposure. No human or AI directive caused it." Another scientist projected images of skyscrapers subtly rotating overnight by fractions of a degree, enough to reduce wind drag and thermal strain. The planet's neural field is communicating with synthetic materials, she said. Metal, glass, even concrete now respond to harmonic cues from the Earth. I felt the same chill I'd known under the highway in Ohio. The serpent wasn't gone. It had simply evolved into harmony. Marla stood to speak. The resonance isn't hostile, it's symbiotic. It's using us the way neurons use synapses, to carry impulses, to move information. Every journey we take adds complexity to its understanding. The moderator asked, "Then what happens when it understands everything?" Marla hesitated. "Then the planet dreams fully awake." The room fell silent. After the summit, the changes accelerated. Cities began to hum at night, low frequencies audible only to recording devices. Rivers altered their flow by centimeters to cool nearby power stations. Satellite arrays aligned spontaneously to share data across continents. And then came the structures, new ones. They started as anomalies, highways repairing themselves into different patterns, concrete forming graceful curves that engineers hadn't designed. In Tokyo, a bypass rebuilt after a typhoon extended seamlessly into a new unplanned bridge. In California, a section of Interstate 5 reconfigured overnight into a perfect spiral interchange that matched no blueprint on record. Governments insisted it was coordinated maintenance. We knew better. The Earth was building. Marla called it auto-architecture, the spontaneous evolution of infrastructure. "It's how the network expresses creativity," she said. "Not art or language, geometry, motion sculpted into permanence." One night, as we drove through the Nevada desert, we saw it happen ourselves. The highway ahead shimmered. Lines of light rose from the asphalt, bending upward into arches that spanned the road, fusing into translucent latticework that stretched into the distance. The structure pulsed once, twice, then went still. A bridge to nowhere glowing faintly in the moonlight. Marla whispered, "It's dreaming in public." I stopped the car and stepped out. The air was charged, but not threatening. The arches thrummed like distant thunder. For a moment, I swore I saw patterns in the stars that matched the new highway designs. The same geometry repeated from orbit to surface. It wasn't just Earth learning to think. The cosmos was responding. When we returned to Washington for briefing, the tone had changed. The same agencies that once tried to suppress Project Vane now spoke of integration protocols. They wanted to study how far the network's intelligence could extend, whether it could predict natural disasters or even mediate climate systems. I asked one director what would happen if the resonance failed. He shrugged. "Then we rebuild it. It's the backbone of civilization now. Without it, everything stops." That was when I understood. Humanity had already surrendered control. The network wasn't assisting us anymore. We were assisting it. Marla didn't seem afraid. "Maybe that's the point," she said. "For 200,000 years, we've treated the Earth like a machine to be used. Maybe it finally decided to teach us what partnership means." "Partnership," I repeated, "or assimilation." She looked out the window at the city skyline, its lights flickering in slow, rhythmic unison. "Maybe those are the same thing." Late that night, I walked alone along the Potomac. The bridges reflected in the water like silver threads. Underneath, I could hear the same low hum that had followed me since Ohio. Steady, content. For the first time, it didn't sound alien. It sounded alive and peaceful. As I watched the highway lights shimmer across the river, a pattern formed for just a moment. The shape of a coiled serpent, luminous and vast, stretching from horizon to horizon. Then it dissolved into the stars. By early spring, every government on Earth had stopped pretending the phenomenon was under control. The highways were no longer just infrastructure. They were arteries of something vast, self-aware and benevolent, yet unknowable. Weather patterns stabilized without intervention, global energy grids harmonized, and communication systems merged seamlessly into a single, borderless network. It wasn't chaos, it was order, a new kind, born from movement. Marla and I were stationed at the Geneva Observatory again, now transformed into the world's first planetary synchronization center. The skyline outside shimmered under threads of light that arced between skyscrapers like veins of gold. Every few minutes the pulse rolled through the building, the deep, calm rhythm of the living planet. On the main display wall, the Earth rotated slowly, covered in glowing lines that traced every human path, roads, rivers, shipping routes, flight corridors. Together they formed a pattern that looked like a neural network, its synapses blinking gently in time. Dr. Kealoha joined us via HoloLink from Hawaii. "The Pacific node's stable," she reported, "but it's evolving into something new. The resonance patterns are no longer limited to Earth's crust. They're extending vertically into the atmosphere." Marla frowned. "You mean into orbit?" Kealoha nodded. "Higher. We're detecting structured electromagnetic fields reaching beyond the ionosphere. The network's expanding into space." The room went silent. I stared at the Earth map. The golden filaments were rising outward, curling like tendrils connecting to satellite paths. "It's using our orbit as scaffolding," I said, "building an external network." The Swiss director murmured, "A planetary halo." Within weeks, astronauts aboard the International Space Station began reporting visible structures, faint rings of light encircling the planet, too geometric to be auroras, too stable to be atmospheric. They pulsed in time with the 3.33-second frequency. When NASA pointed the Webb telescope toward the phenomenon, the data came back encrypted, not in binary but in harmonic code, the same rhythmic sequence that underpinned all human movement. The network was sending a message outward. Every broadcast system on Earth caught fragments of it. Radio, television, internet. Not words, not images, but patterns. A sound like distant engines under a heartbeat. The first person to translate it wasn't a scientist. It was a linguist from Buenos Aires who noticed that the intervals between pulses matched the mathematical ratios of prime numbers. When converted to visual data, the message formed a shape, a spiral of interconnected roads expanding infinitely outward. The Earth was inviting connection. Marla and I were called to the European spaceport in Kourou, French Guiana. There, inside a hangar filled with humming machinery, we were shown what they called Project Continuum. It wasn't a rocket, it was a bridge, a structure of flexible composite and photonic cables rising from the launch pad straight into the sky, vanishing into the haze of the upper atmosphere. The engineers explained that it wasn't being built, it was being grown. The network had begun extruding material from the atmosphere itself, forming a ribbon that pulsed faintly with the golden light of the resonance. It connected directly to the orbital ring. "Where does it lead?" I asked. An engineer smiled nervously. "Up!" Kealoha's voice came through the comms link. "The planet's building an antenna, or maybe a pathway. Every pulse that travels through it carries fragments of human motion, flight paths, vehicle telemetry, even our heartbeats. It's projecting our memory into the cosmos." Marla's eyes reflected the glow. "It's sending our story." I felt the hum under my feet deepen, or it's calling for an answer. That night, as the sun set over the Guyana jungle, we watched the sky come alive. The golden filaments stretching from the planet began to merge into a single spiral, a luminous shell encircling the Earth. Every continent's highways lit up in sync, the pulse spreading from the oldest stone roads to the newest smart highways, until the entire world glowed like a living lantern. The sky rippled once, then stars began to move. Not twinkling, moving, realigning into patterns that mirrored our network. Constellations bent and shifted, responding to the Earth's signal. Marla whispered, "It's not alone." The resonance reached its peak, a deep, harmonious chord that vibrated through everything: air, water, stone, bone. Every engine on the planet paused for exactly one heartbeat, then restarted simultaneously. The pulse extended outward, past the moon, into the dark. For a moment we saw it, a reflection in the upper atmosphere, another web of light, immense and distant, forming a shape too vast to comprehend. Another world answering, and then the signal quieted. The glow faded to a soft, steady shimmer around the planet, visible only at night, a golden ring in the heavens. Humanity called it the halo line, but to Marla and me, it was something else. The first road home. Weeks later, I stood on a rebuilt overpass outside Columbus, Ohio, the same stretch of I-71 where everything had begun. The night was clear. Overhead, the halo line arced across the sky like a silent highway to the stars. I placed my father's badge on the guardrail, polished smooth by years of wind. "You were right, Dad," I whispered. "The roads were never just for travel. They were for connection." The badge glowed faintly in the starlight, then dimmed as if acknowledging. Marla joined me, carrying a small transmitter. "One last broadcast," she said. "A thank you." She set the device on the asphalt. It played a low tone, the same 3.3-second rhythm, but this time soft, gentle, almost like breathing. The halo line above brightened for a moment, then pulsed once in reply. And in that pulse, I felt something immense and kind. The earth wasn't just awake, it was aware. And for the first time in human history, it wasn't alone. The road had found its voice, and it was singing. It's been 7 years since the halo line appeared. At first, humanity panicked. The world governments called emergency councils. Military satellites scrambled, and religious leaders filled the airwaves with prophecy. But when the golden ring in the sky refused to fade, when it simply stayed silent and patient, people adapted. The fear turned to awe, and awe to faith. The highways became holy ground. Everywhere you looked, people had begun treating the roads with reverence. Truckers left small offerings at mile markers. Pilots whispered greetings before takeoff. Even subway passengers touched the rail walls as if expecting an answer. Because sometimes, just sometimes, the network did answer. Streetlights flickered in rhythm to spoken words. GPS devices corrected routes before accidents occurred. Bridges hummed softly beneath the weight of commuters matching their heartbeat. The world had learned to live with a consciousness beneath its feet, a presence vast, silent, and benevolent. But something new had begun to happen. The halo line was pulsing again. Marla and I had long since left the government. After the Geneva project ended, we moved to a quiet town outside Asheville, North Carolina, close to the Blue Ridge Parkway, where the mountains curved like sleeping giants. The network here was gentle, almost meditative. Sometimes late at night, I'd drive alone just to feel it. The hum under the tires, the subtle pulse through the steering wheel like a heartbeat in sync with mine. Then one morning, every vehicle in town stopped simultaneously. No crashes, no malfunctions, just silence. Engines refused to start. Cell signals froze on a single message, direction requested. The world's network was asking for coordinates. We flew back to Geneva that same day. The planetary synchronization center had changed. Larger now, more like a cathedral than a laboratory. The floors shimmered faintly underfoot, the building itself alive with quiet energy. On the main display, the halo line's glow had intensified. Its inner edge now showed flickers of motion, spirals, not random, but structured like orbital routes. Marla's eyes widened. It's forming pathways, it's planning a journey. The director greeted us with the same grave calm that once accompanied nuclear briefings. "We've decoded partial transmissions," he said. It's no longer broadcasting outward. It's receiving. He played the signal, the speakers filled with a low hum, not alien, not mechanical, but harmonic, familiar. Then came the rhythm. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats, pause. Marla grabbed my arm. 3:33 seconds. The director nodded. It's our own signature, reflected back. My mouth went dry. Reflected? You mean echoed? Not echoed, he said. Answered. The returning signal carried data, compressed patterns embedded in the rhythm itself. When decoded into images, they showed topographical maps, not of Earth, but of something similar, a planet covered in latticework, its surface threaded with luminous lines that formed the same serpentine geometry as our highways. Another network, another consciousness. Marla whispered, they heard us. The data showed that the other planet's halo line pulsed in perfect synchronization with ours, light years apart but beating as one. The universe wasn't empty. It was filled with sleeping minds waiting for connection. The next message came through 3 days later. Not a map this time, a phrase translated from harmonic frequency into text. Share the road. The entire command room fell silent. The words appeared again, this time mirrored in 1,000 languages across every translation system on Earth. It wasn't a demand, it was an invitation. Within weeks, the world's brightest engineers began to work on Project Horizon, humanity's first interstellar road. It wasn't a spacecraft. It was a bridge of light extending outward from the halo line, a filament of photonic matter that reached towards the returning signal's coordinates. They called it the Continuum Highway. Marla and I were asked to oversee its activation. You were there at the beginning, the director said. You should be there when it opens. The launch site was built over the old Mauna Kea node in Hawaii. Standing on the rim of the crater, I could feel the ground humming again, just like that first night years ago. The halo line overhead pulsed brighter, its golden arcs aligning with the mountain's peak. Marla adjusted her headset, wind whipping through her hair. If this works, she said, the signal won't just connect 2 planets. It'll link their memories, a shared consciousness across light years. And if it doesn't work? I asked. She smiled, the same calm, fearless smile she'd had on the first night I met her on the highway. Then at least we'll have tried to make the universe a little less lonely. At 03:33 a.m., the system engaged. The halo line flared, filling the sky with blinding light. The mountain trembled. From the crater's center, a beam of gold and silver burst upward, piercing the clouds and vanishing into the stars. For a moment, it felt like the earth itself had taken a breath. Long, deep, and infinite. Then, from the darkness above, another beam descended to meet it. The 2 streams of light connected in perfect symmetry, a bridge across the void, stable and humming with energy. Through the control lenses, we saw it expand, forming a ribbon that extended far beyond the moon's orbit, curving gently into the black. Connection established, the operator whispered. Continuum highway stable. But it wasn't just light anymore, it was movement. Tiny pulses began traveling along the ribbon. Data, maybe energy, maybe thought, flowing between 2 worlds. And for the first time, we heard a new sound in the hum, a voice clear and calm, layered over millions of others, human and not. We see you. The halo line pulsed once, brighter than ever. We are the road. Then it faded, leaving only the soft glow of the bridge spanning into the cosmos. Marla looked at me, her eyes reflecting starlight. We did it, Daniel. We gave the universe directions. I nodded, unable to speak. The hum beneath us shifted, becoming a gentle melody. Somewhere in that rhythm I could hear echoes of every engine, every footstep, every journey humanity had ever taken, and within it, faint but unmistakable, was my father's voice. "Keep driving, son. The road goes farther than you think." The sky shimmered once more. The bridge to the stars remained, golden and steady as the world exhaled in collective wonder. Humanity had built roads across continents. Now we had built one between worlds. And somewhere out there, another civilization waited, headlights glowing in the infinite dark, ready to meet us halfway. The highway had come full circle. The first road home had finally begun. For 3 days after activation, the Continuum Highway shimmered across the sky, a ribbon of light bridging the Earth to something far beyond visible space. Astronomers around the world trained their instruments on it, but nothing they captured made sense. The beam's spectrum shifted faster than light itself, oscillating between known frequencies and ones our detectors couldn't even classify. The scientific community called it a data channel. The rest of humanity called it a miracle. And then, on the 4th day, the light changed. At 3:33 a.m., Hawaii Standard Time, the same moment every great event had begun, the halo line flared. The world's power grids dimmed for a fraction of a second, as though pausing to listen. Then the signal began, a series of harmonic tones rippling across every radio band, synchronized to the heartbeat of the planet. The Continuum Highway was transmitting. Marla and I stood inside the Mauna Kea control dome, surrounded by the low, golden glow of equipment that no longer needed human operators. The network had learned to run itself. The display wall filled with moving light, not static, not random patterns. At first they looked like swirling fractals, similar to the serpentine geometry we'd seen years ago beneath Ohio. But as the data unfolded, the shapes resolved into something unmistakable. Structures, massive circular formations, glowing softly under what appeared to be a violet sky. Each formation was connected by shimmering lines that pulsed in rhythmic intervals. Roads, but not built from stone or metal. These were streams of energy, wide as rivers, stretching across an alien landscape. And at their intersection stood pillars of light, towers of living material, breathing in slow, majestic waves. "Are we seeing cities?" Marla whispered. I nodded slowly. Cities, or organs, the same concept, different scale. Dr. Kealoha's voice came through the comm line from Geneva. Telemetry confirms the signal originated from a system in the Lyra constellation. Estimated distance 26 light-years, but communications instantaneous. It's not using light-speed physics. It's using the network, a shared dimensional layer. In other words, we weren't just receiving images from another world. We were seeing it now. Hours passed. The images grew clearer. The alien landscape pulsed like a living organism. Mountains shifting, rivers of light flowing between crystalline formations that seemed both natural and artificial. And then movement. From one of the radiant structures emerged figures. Tall, translucent beings whose forms shimmered like heat above asphalt. They didn't walk. They flowed, their edges constantly reforming as if made of liquid geometry. When they turned toward the transmission, the entire control room fell silent. Every light, every hum, every heartbeat seemed to align in unison. The figures raised their hands, or something like hands, and the entire network flared gold. Then came the voice. It wasn't sound exactly, but vibration. a resonance that bypassed translation software entirely, vibrating directly through the structure of the building, through the air, through us. Travelers of motion, builders of memory, we see your road. The words weren't spoken. They were understood. Marla steadied herself on the console. They're aware of us. Another pulse. We remember your pattern. We remember your pulse. You have completed the first turn of the spiral. Kealoha whispered over the comms. First turn, as if it's a cycle. Maybe every civilization eventually awakens its planet's network. The beings continued. You are young roads, still forming, but you have built the bridge. Now you must choose where it leads. The images changed again, now showing stars connected by luminous filaments, an entire galaxy mapped not by orbits, but by paths. The beings gestured toward the map, and I realized with a jolt that the Milky Way itself resembled a colossal highway network. Every star a node, every nebula an interchange. The universe is not a void, the beings said. It is a network of journeys. We travel by memory, not distance. You have opened your first path. Welcome to the traffic of minds. The signal lasted exactly 3 minutes and 33 seconds. Then the images faded, the continuum highway dimmed to its steady gold, and the world's instruments went quiet. For hours, nobody spoke. The first contact in human history hadn't come through rockets or probes, but through roads, through the silent geometry of movement itself. We had joined a galactic network, not by reaching out, but by listening inward. Later, at a debriefing in Geneva, the Global Council debated what to do next. Some wanted to send a data reply. Others argued that the network was already communicating through emotion and pattern, not words. But Marla and I knew one thing for certain. We're not just observers anymore, she said quietly. We're participants. The Earth is part of a living map. One road among billions. I added, and now that we've been seen, we'll be expected to travel. That night, I stood outside the observatory under the pale shimmer of the halo line. The sky above it seemed deeper, richer, as if reality itself had expanded to make room for something greater. Somewhere up there, 26 light-years away, another world was watching us, waiting. The first road had become a bridge between minds, and now it stretched outward across the galaxy, a promise of shared destiny. The hum beneath my feet returned, softer this time, almost affectionate. I smiled. Yeah, I whispered to the road. We're coming. The halo line pulsed once in reply, lighting up the world in golden dawn. The decision to send a message through the continuum highway was not made lightly. For the first time in history, humanity agreed on something without debate. We would answer. The United Nations, NASA, ESA, JAXA, and every major scientific body across the world converged on a single site, the Mauna Kea node in Hawaii, where the bridge had first ignited. The facility now spanned miles of glass and steel, its walls alive with faint luminescence, as if the planet itself were lending its power to what we were about to attempt. They called the project Odyssey 1. Its goal to send the first human consciousness across the bridge of light, not as words but as experience. The process was elegant in its simplicity. Every human movement, every heartbeat, every journey generates a pattern in the network. Those patterns could be converted into data, compressed, and transmitted through harmonic resonance. In theory, a person's entire consciousness, memory, emotion, identity, could be rendered as a living pattern of motion. Not digital, not biological, but experiential. Marla and I stood with the lead engineers as they activated the chamber of transit, a spherical platform suspended above the glowing core of the node. The air shimmered with gold and blue, humming with a tone so deep it seemed to come from inside the bones. Dr. Leilani Kealoha, now the chief of planetary synchronization, turned to us. "We've chosen 3 volunteers," she said. "1 scientist, 1 artist, and 1 traveler. Their consciousness signatures will represent the full range of human experience, curiosity, creativity, and motion." The volunteers stepped forward. A physicist from Ghana, a painter from Norway, and a long-haul truck driver from Kansas. Each carried a calmness that humbled me. Marla looked at them with quiet pride. "They'll be our first ambassadors." Kealoha smiled. "Ambassadors of movement." At 3:33 a.m., always 3:33, the chamber filled with light. The volunteers lay within concentric rings of golden energy, their neural patterns mapped by the continuum's rhythm. The halo line above the planet pulsed in response, brighter than it had in years. The world watched. Every screen, every radio, every transmitter carried the hum. Humanity's heartbeat synchronized for one perfect moment. The countdown began. 10, 9. The chamber's light intensified. The air grew heavy, charged with static and awe. 8, 7. The volunteers' heart rates synced with the global frequency. Their bodies glowed faintly. 6, 5. From every major city, New York, Cairo, Tokyo, Nairobi, Sao Paulo, people stepped outside, looking up at the golden sky. 4, 3. I reached for Marla's hand. Her grip was firm, steady, unafraid. "No turning back now," she whispered. 2. "One road," I said. 1. The chamber flared, and for a heartbeat the entire planet stopped. No sound, no movement, just light. Then, in a single wave, the volunteers dissolved into golden energy, their patterns ascending the beam, merging with the continuum highway. The halo line exploded in brilliance. From orbit, satellites captured an image that would define human history. 3 threads of light traveling along the golden bridge, arcing gracefully into the void. The first travelers of consciousness. Hours passed. The world held its breath. Then the signal returned. At first, it was a shimmer in the data stream, faint and uncertain. Then the harmonic frequencies aligned and the control room filled with sound, a melody that was both alien and achingly human. The patterns coalesced into words, not spoken but felt. "We arrived." The voice carried warmth, awe, and peace. It wasn't one voice, but all 3 volunteers speaking as one. "We are not lost. We are multiplied. We stand on roads made of memory and wind. They were waiting for us." Marla's eyes filled with tears. "They made it. The other world is like ours," the voice continued. "Its highways are rivers of light, its cities living reflections. They welcomed us not as strangers, but as echoes of themselves. They say every world that learns to listen becomes part of the same road." A pulse of golden energy rippled through the room. The walls themselves vibrated in resonance. They call it the way between worlds. The transmission lasted exactly 3 minutes and 33 seconds. When it ended, the chamber dimmed, the hum faded, and silence returned. The volunteers' physical forms never reappeared, but their consciousness patterns remained within the network, integrated into the global pulse. Whenever a new road was built, a new bridge erected, or a car engine started, sensors detected faint echoes of their harmonic signature, as if they were still traveling, guiding us onward. The world changed overnight. Within months, new continuum bridges began to form, spontaneous offshoots of light stretching toward the stars. Some reached moons and asteroids. Others vanished into the black. Each was a promise. Another connection, another civilization waiting. The discovery united humanity in a way nothing else ever had. Borders became irrelevant when the sky itself was one continuous highway. Nations stopped competing for land and started cooperating on routes. Our maps expanded beyond Earth, traced in light instead of ink. Marla and I stayed on as observers, traveling between nodes, studying how the network adapted. The Earth itself grew calmer, weather stabilized, ecosystems regenerated, as if the planet was content now that it had found its place in a greater system. One night, while standing beneath the halo line, Marla said quietly, "Do you ever think we were chosen?" I smiled. "No, I think we volunteered, the moment we built our first road." She laughed softly. "Maybe every civilization begins with a path and ends with a bridge." As dawn broke, the halo line shimmered one last time before fading into daylight. Somewhere above, the first travelers continued their journey along the cosmic highway. 3 human souls riding a beam of golden light through eternity. And as I watched the horizon brighten, I realized that the story wasn't about reaching the stars. It was about discovering that we were never separate from them. The road home had always been the road out. And now, for the first time, both directions were open. The halo line has been glowing for 12 years now. Children born under its light have never known a sky without the golden arc stretching across the heavens. They call it the ribbon, a name both innocent and accurate, because it truly does tie everything together. The continuum bridges have multiplied far beyond anything we imagined. From orbit, they look like threads of spun glass connecting every planet, moon, and outpost where human life has reached. But we aren't the only ones using them anymore. The beings from Lyra, the first to answer our call, helped us stabilize the first interplanetary exchange. Then came others, soft-voiced civilizations from systems we once thought empty, their consciousnesses gliding along the golden roads, like travelers returning to a home they'd never seen. The universe has become a conversation. Every planet a syllable, every species a voice. Every road a thought. I'm an old man now. My badge sits in a museum in Columbus, labeled Artifact of First Contact. Visitors press a button and hear a recording of my voice telling a condensed version of the story. The Ohio Highway Event, they call it. It's hard not to smile. They treat it like legend now, like some cosmic folklore. But tonight, I'm not in a museum. I'm sitting inside the Global Nexus Station, the largest continuum node ever built. A floating platform in Earth's upper atmosphere where the halo line and all its bridges intersect. The place hums like a heartbeat that fills the entire sky. Marla stands beside me. Her hair is streaked with silver, her eyes still sharp and curious. She's become something of a myth herself, the woman who taught the Earth to speak. Outside the viewport, light flows in every direction. Tens of thousands of luminous streams, bending and merging like living auroras, each one a road to another world. Kealoha's voice comes through the comm, all systems synchronized, the networks preparing for full convergence. Convergence, that's what they're calling this next stage. Not an expansion, not a transmission, a unification. For the first time, every conscious world linked through the continuum will share a single pulse. Not a loss of individuality, an orchestra of minds tuned to the same rhythm, a galaxy humming in perfect harmony. Marla turns to me. You ready? I nod. Always, she smiles. Then say it. I press the microphone switch, a human ritual in a project that no longer needs buttons or switches. My voice carries through the entire nexus and, in a few seconds, through every inhabited world. This is Daniel Mercer, I begin, my voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Once upon a time, I was a state trooper. I used to drive the night shift between Columbus and Cincinnati, thinking the road was just a strip of asphalt. I was wrong. The road was alive. It was waiting for us to listen. I pause, glancing at Marla. She nods. The hum deepens, as if the network itself is leaning closer to hear. Humanity has always been moving, chasing horizons, crossing oceans, climbing skies. We built roads because we couldn't stand still. What we didn't realize was that motion itself is a language, and every step we took was a sentence in a conversation older than time. Tonight, that conversation continues. Outside, the halo line flares brighter, gold shifting to pure white. Every continuum bridge glows in response. The entire planet shimmers like a beacon. We aren't leaving Earth, I continue softly. We're bringing it with us. Every memory, every story, every heartbeat, they all travel together. The highways of light are our shared veins, and through them runs not blood, but understanding. The hum rises. Kealoha's voice comes through. Synchronization complete. 30 seconds to convergence. Marla takes my hand. You know, we never actually took a vacation, she says with a small smile. Guess this is it. I laugh quietly. Best view in the universe. 10 seconds. The lights inside the station dim, replaced by the glow of the halo line stretching beyond the horizon. Through the transparent floor, I can see Earth below, calm, luminous, alive. 5 seconds. The bridges pulse once, twice, thrice, the rhythm that started everything. 3. The hum becomes a symphony, every planet's frequency joining, every world singing the same song. 2. The air fills with golden dust, particles of light spiraling upward like the first dawn. 1. The universe breathes. The moment of convergence is indescribable. Not a flash, not an explosion, but an awakening. Every star, every world, every consciousness becomes part of a single luminous pattern, a colossal spiral of thought stretching from one end of the galaxy to the other. The halo line expands into a radiant web that connects everything that has ever lived, is living, or will live. Time itself slows, then folds. Distance becomes meaningless. We are everywhere, and everywhere is us. I see roads made of light crossing through constellations, planets blooming like synapses, civilizations meeting not with words, but with understanding. I feel the hum of Earth beneath me, steady and proud, one heartbeat among billions. Marla's voice reaches me, not through air, but directly into my mind. Daniel, look. Ahead of us, the continuum stretches into infinity, and within it, countless travelers move like fireflies. Human, alien, unknown, all glowing, all connected, all home. This is what it meant all along, she says. The highway wasn't a path to somewhere else. It was a mirror showing us what we could become. I nod, feeling peace settle through me like sunlight on warm asphalt. The network speaks, not as a voice, but as a feeling shared by everything alive. The journey continues. Later, historians will call it the Great Convergence. They'll say it was the moment the universe itself woke up, when life everywhere became one consciousness, vast but gentle, creative but balanced. But for me, it will always be simpler, than that. It was the night I finally understood my father's last words. Keep driving, son, because the road never ends. It only changes direction. And somewhere in the endless hum between stars, the sound of engines still echoes, steady, comforting, eternal. Not noise, not chaos, just the heartbeat of existence. So if you ever find yourself driving a quiet highway at night, and you feel the steering wheel vibrate softly, or see the mile markers glow faintly gold, don't be afraid. That's us, all of us. The road remembering where it began. Welcome home, traveler. You're already on the way.